We'll call to order school committee meeting for June 6, 2016. We have a full house, at least in our measurement. That's a great crowd. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for coming. Again, if during the conversation you decide that you would like to say something, please put your name on this particular sheet so we can keep a record of it. Thank you. So it looks like it's going to be a long meeting. We're going to go in the order you're seeing on the agenda that is available to you on the counter. We will quickly go through our minutes of May 23rd. Did everybody get a chance to see the minutes? Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes from May 23rd?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any changes, comments, questions?
It's absent. So
Okay. If you don't want to, you can abstain. Otherwise, you can go with it. All in favor to approve the minutes, please say aye.
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 And
You're
I'll
saying
abstain.
aye? You will abstain?
Yep.
Okay, so we have one abstain. I don't know if Kathy's taking the notes.
no.
Okay. All right. Next, we have visitors' comments. I think we all know why everybody's here, more or less. I have 4 names who signed up to speak. Again, if you change your mind, did you want to sign up to speak
Yes,
as well?
please.
Okay. Is Kristen here? Kristen Naglieri? Okay, so we'll start with Kristen Naglieri.
Good evening. I'm Kristen Naglieri. I'm the president of the Granby Teachers Association. I wanted to bring to the attention of the entire school committee that when the first initial rounds of cuts were done, teachers at the high school were pulled out of their classrooms into the hallway and were told that they were getting their pink slips to return to their classrooms that they were actively teaching in prior to being pulled out. During our Wednesday, May 25th negotiations meeting with Deanne was present, as well as Emery, we expressed how greatly upset we were that this had happened. You know, no respect, nothing for these people who have just lost their jobs, potentially. So then we were told it won't happen again. They were very, remorseful, that, who were the people that were, affected. They would do personal apologies, and I said, no, that wasn't going to happen. And then on Tuesday, it happened again. And I contacted Emery, expressed to him how sad I was because there were 9 of the 10 exec board members present when it was said that it wasn't going to happen again, and it did. And, I know that your hands are tied, Emery, but in a sense, it was, we'll ensure this won't happen again. But it already did the first time after we were already told it wouldn't happen again. So I wanted to make sure the entire board knew how really saddened we are by this. If it was, just really sad. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Just for the record, Kristen, since you don't mind, since we're in public session, when you said teachers were pulled out, this wasn't every teacher. Is that a correct understanding?
Right. These were the
Okay.
teachers
Not that it
were
makes it
affected.
any
No, correct.
less excusable, but okay. So at least I would like to then, since you mentioned our correspondence, I would like to mention what I wrote back to you. From our perspective, it's something that should not happen. It's unacceptable. It's something that should not happen. I know that at least the first time we had the conversation, it was due to circumstances. At least that was the conversation. But we appreciate that you brought it here, you mentioned it, and it's all good. But it's not really something that we'd like to see anywhere. It's not just schools. It is a very difficult situation for the person who receives such a notice. And after all, we're all human beings, and you're absolutely correct. We have to respect that. And our effort going forward will be to make sure that it never, ever happens again in that fashion. So, again, thank you for bringing it up. And we were going to more than likely have a brief conversation around that later on, but since the opportunity arose right now, so let me tell you that our effort, our collective effort, all of us, not just the school committee, will be to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
And I sincerely apologize. I of course, hearing it after the fact doesn't help the teachers involved, and that is certainly not something that I know anybody on the school committee would condone. So I personally and sincerely apologize that took place. And I would not want to be on the receiving end of something like that.
The sad part, though, Deanne, is that there's never consequences.
Yeah, I believe I shared my apology on behalf of everyone with you as well, Kristen. So, again, thank you for bringing that up. Next, we have Colleen LaPointe.
Yes. I understand the school committee made a policy change in terms of putting teachers' names on report cards for the following year. We were told not to do that.
Say it again one more time.
A policy change regarding notifying parents as to who their child's teacher was going to be next year on the report card that goes home on the last day of school. We were told there was a policy change around that we were not to put teachers' names on report cards.
Okay, so I will look at our administrators to see if that is the case.
That's correct.
Okay, so I'm wondering how parents are going to be notified of this ahead of time so that when the report card goes home, it doesn't look like the teacher forgot to put the teacher's name on for the following year. So I'm just wondering how that information is going to be related to parents.
Okay.
It's the student policy. It says, if I may, I believe that the words in the policy, I might be citing the wrong policy. I believe it's policy J is the student. But it says that they will be notified 2 weeks prior to the start of the year. So at this point in time, it just says that they will be notified. It doesn't say exactly how in the policy. So I think that's something that we would have to discuss.
I'm speaking more about how parents are going to be notified that a policy change has been made.
Right.
Because they're used to
So
seeing
we,
it. I see what you're
right,
saying.
yeah. So we can send a Connect Ed or a school messenger
Okay.
home.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
I know that at the step-up day for the grade 3 to 4 parents, I notified them just so that that's a big transition year.
Right.
And I was planning on putting out something, but we can definitely do that.
Okay, because they go home next week.
Absolutely.
So, Colleen, thanks for bringing it up. As far as we know, that's not a very recent policy change, but what you're bringing up is actually more important than a single policy. How do we, as parents or as school community, find out about policy changes? We should discuss that and find a better process to make sure that everybody knows what changes we're making. Even though when those changes happen, they're updated, you don't know that they're updated all the time if you do not have a way of being noticed, whether it's email or some other means. So thank you for bringing that up. Diana Peltier?
Hi, I'm Diana Peltier. I live at 8 Karen Drive. I also happen to be the co-chair of the PTO. And I'm here today for a couple of reasons. I really think it's a crying shame. First, I want to thank you for doing your guys' job. I know it's not an easy job with the budget that you're given. And I know that there's tons of people here, and there's not always tons of people here. So I appreciate your patience and understanding. What I would ask of you, and I'd ask of every parent in this room, is this is the most important book that you are going to read to your children this year. And you need to get one if you do not have one and you live in this town. This is our town book. This establishes our budgets, and it basically establishes what comes to the school. And there are funds available. It's on page 50. They're in the stabilization fund, and all of these people here today do not need to be here, and our town does not need to be up in arms if we are doing the right thing. I also would like to ask all the parents who are here today, as well as everyone who's sitting here on the committee, to seriously consider other roles in our town. There's going to be upcoming finance committee positions in our town. There's 2 of them coming available this year. They control the budget for the town, for people who are not aware. In addition to that, the plan, our capital improvement plan for this town, we have 5 vacancies coming up. That is our 3-year plan, our 5-year plan. That is so we don't have to keep doing this year after year. Everyone is here because we're vested in our children. You're great teachers. We have a great school committee, and we're trying to work together, but we need to find a way to really level set the budget so that we don't have to keep coming up with a deficit. So if you don't have this book, please find it. If you haven't talked to Chris and your local officials, I strongly encourage you to do so. And I think that's how we can all make a difference. For those who haven't signed the petition that I'm circulating, please see me after. I cannot do it on school property. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick note, Diana, thank you for bringing it up. There's actually a companion booklet, which is the Finance Committee's booklet that has a lot of information on last year's budget and this year's budget and their recommendations. If you go to the town website and click on town meeting link that is on the left-hand side, you will see the booklet, or you will see the links, and one of them will be to the Finance Committee's booklet. So just to add to what Diana said, that's one. Number 2, just to slightly change what you said, Diana, the final decision on any budget in this town is made through town meeting. So it is very important that all of our citizens in our town come to the town meeting to make their voices heard. It's not the Finance Committee's decision. We approve a budget. It's not our decision. We propose that approved budget, but it is up to the residents of this town and those folks who come to the town meeting to decide what that final budget is going to be. Thanks again. Next we have Autumn Dewberry. Autumn.
Hello, I've been a student here since 7th grade, and I'm also a member of the student council. I'd like to bring up the feelings that the students have regarding the teachers being dismissed. Whether or not you have seen it, we did a protest this afternoon out in front, and it has been seen by several news channels. These teachers have been around long enough that some of them practically raised us, and to just get rid of them is crushing to some of these students. I mean, personally, a couple of these teachers taught me what it means to be a person, what it means to be an adult, what it means to be a good member of society. And I think we need to find a new way of doing this, and perhaps a more vocal way for students and children to be able to speak out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Autumn. Thank you. Thank you for raising your voice in a very respectful way, organizing your friends to do the same. So it is much appreciated. That's actually what we expect from a healthy system. We all have our rights to express our opinions, and you guys have done it in a great way. So thank you. Thank you all you and all your friends. We have one last on our list. If you want to add your name, again, just feel free to do so. Christina Weatherby.
Hi, I'm Chris Weatherby. I live on Taylor Street. I have 2 children in the school system. In all honesty, I'm thinking of pulling my children out, and have for several years now. Every year, the budget gets worse and worse, and I don't see us coming up with how to prevent these things and how next year it's not going to happen again. We've taken so much away from the kids. We're talking sports now, we're talking music, and I'm just very disappointed, and I don't know what the plan is or how to improve on where we're going with the school system. Kids are dropping out, and they're doing it because their parents are frustrated. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Before we move on, anybody else? Okay. So, feel free to stay. The budget-related section is a little down the line. Hopefully we'll get there soon enough. If you would like to stay for it, please stay. This is your meeting as much as our meeting. It's an open meeting. You can stay for any session except for the executive session that will be at the end. And if you have any other questions, concerns, you did not feel like raising it here, as always, please find at the very least, find our email addresses on the school website. I'm talking about the school committee. Send us a note. Send us a note to our superintendent. Send a note to our superintendent. Send a note to our principals. Whoever you feel comfortable to share your questions and concerns with, please do so. We need to find out your concerns. We know broadly your concerns, but we also know that there are a lot of things that are put in front of us as far as reductions. We want to find out, because one of the exercises that we're going to go through as much as we can tonight will be related to how we would like to prioritize should we have some additional funds, and what we would like to and what we can bring back. And it's not an easy decision for us to make in isolation. We want to hear your feedback, your input. So this conversation is going to be ongoing. If you chose not to say anything tonight, don't feel like the conversation ended, please let us know at least through email. If the school committee doesn't mind, I want to add one thing before we lose some of you. I know that this is a very sensitive, very emotional, very personal subject to all of us. We have children in the school system, or we are invested in the school system in different ways. But the main reason why the folks are sitting around this table is because our kids are very important to us, our town and community. It is very important to us. And education, especially public education, is very, very important to us. That's why we're here. And as the debate goes on, I know that social media is a beautiful thing, and there are a lot of things being discussed. Sometimes things are said or shared that may not really be as accurate as it should be at this point in time, because of the sensitivity of the subject. We get very heated. So I want to at the very least, address one thing that came up today as students were out. I got 2 text messages almost immediately from 2 adults saying that, hey, did you know anything about this? The messages say that the school committee ordered the students back in the school. We are volunteers who actually come together at these meetings. By law, we can't come together any other time, and we have to actually come together to make any decision, even if we were able to do such a thing as ordering someone to go into the school. That's the administration's job. That's not our job. But that said, I also received a couple of emails. One of them, I think you all received, from Mr. Cavallo. What I shared with Autumn was very sincere and almost a reflection of those 2 emails that I received from our superintendent and Mr. Cavallo. That obviously, there are things in the code book that says you can't just walk out and do things all the time. But there was a great level of understanding by everyone here that this was done for a reason and for a good reason. And our students, using their rights to speak out, they organized a great and very respectful, and I'm underlining that respectful thing, demonstration. They went out, they spoke to the media, or at least they channeled to the media. And even that, they did it so well, knowing who they could talk to and who could speak to the press. I just want to make sure that everybody understands it was appreciated by everyone that our students not only were able to, but found the courage to do what they have done. And nobody here actually, except for, I believe, after about an hour or so, or towards the end of that first hour, asked the students forcefully to go back into the building. Hopefully that's it. Again, if you have any questions, especially on sensitive issues, our plea with you is that please send an email and ask us. We'll get you the best information to the extent that we can, so we don't have to waste our time and energy on hearsay and rumor and things that are not necessarily accurate. Okay, I just wanted to add that.
I was at a couple of graduation parties this weekend, and at least half a dozen rumors of folks that came up to me and said, is this true and is that true? And all of them were not true. So there's a lot of stuff that's floating around out there. So, you know, I agree with Emery. If you have any questions, concerns, you know our emails, you know how to contact us, feel free. Feel free. Everything that we say is done in open session and by law, so there's nothing behind the scenes. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you. Thank you again for being here. If you would like to wait until the later conversation, please feel free to do so. So next we have our student representatives report. Did you want to turn around? Yeah, that's good.
So on, I wasn't here the last couple meetings because I wasn't in the thing, but prom was on April 30th, and that went well. I wasn't there, but I heard that it was really fun and the kids had a good time. There was I forget what the date now, but there was an RSAC meeting, which is Regional Student Advisory Council. It's a student government kind of thing. And there was a meeting, and four, myself included, four student council members went to that to represent our school.
Where was that?
At Northampton High School. It was just kids from like the whole region, and then there's a state level. The next meeting coming up for the state level one is June 9th, so on Thursday.
Was there a specific topic of that Northampton meeting?
No, well, it was an orientation for all the new coming members. The band participated in the Memorial Day Parade, as usual, and that went very well. Graduation was a success. All the clubs are wrapping up their activities, and the Student Council is discussing and putting together the annual Granby Day event. Autumn already touched on this, but I just want to end by saying that today a student-run, student-organized walkout protest was held in front of the school. This was to vocalize the students' frustration over losing not only beloved teaching staff who have made huge positive impacts in students' lives, but also educational opportunities that the students cannot get back. It will be a struggle next year for sure to try and figure out how any department will be able to run efficiently or effectively on only 2 teachers in each department. The students are upset about parts of our education being taken away from us from a lack of funding from the state, which is causing our electives and core classes to be minimized by teachers being laid off, and because these teachers who have dedicated hours and hours of their time to this job to make sure we have a good and solid understanding of everything we learn and who try their best to ensure that we have the best education that we possibly can are being laid off. I speak for the entire student body when I say that we are upset by the opportunities being taken away from everyone by cutting these teachers out of jobs next year. Our learning environment and horizon is diminished when our electives, specials, core class options and clubs, after-school activities, and sports get cut. For instance, there is extensive research showing that music has so many positive impacts on the brain, and yet 4th grade band is being cut. A full enriching education should be a right. Expanding my knowledge should not be a privilege. It should be something provided to everyone. Language classes, band, electives, and clubs and sports are all being cut down. Where are the creative outlets and ways to express ourselves anymore when fourth graders are no longer able to be creative and express themselves and build life skills off of something as simple as music and being part of band? When students can no longer have the lasting impact and life skills learning of being on a sports team in middle school at such an important and impressionable time in a teen's life? What happens when students are wondering whether they will have a band class at all next year or for years to come, or if their brand new theater club will make it to another year? When they are wondering whether older clubs such as Hope that helps out in so many different facets will be cut as well. It shrinks the students' potential to be able to express themselves, be creative, imaginative, well-rounded individuals who have a variety of life skills and knowledge about all sorts of things that they have learned from the clubs and electives and activities that they should have had an opportunity to have. Please support our education and bring back our teachers and our opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else you want to share? Thank you very much. Just like your friends, thank you for putting that together and sharing it with us. I appreciate it. With that, we are moving to new business.
The NEASC report
Yeah.
for the junior senior high school. So you were given the NEASC report, I think, last meeting for review. It's divided into 6 standards. Each standard has commendations and recommendations. The report will be used to impact changes in programming such as curriculum and instruction, community outreach, infrastructure, resources. So basically, just open for discussion if you have questions or comments about the report. And certainly if you'd like more time, we can put it on the next agenda as well.
Was this attached to the website somehow, the report? Is it on the website anymore?
Not yet, right?
No, it has not. It has not. This is really the first time that's being made public.
Okay.
I thought that before we put it on the school website, that we would present it to the school committee, and then put it on the school website and make it as public as we can.
That's actually a very good point, but my understanding is that this was already, this is the final report, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Whatever we say doesn't really change the content
Nope.
of it. So we can put it out there so everybody can read it. One thing that I'm wondering is, years ago when the acronym NEASC came up, it was usually in the context of evaluation of buildings, whether or not that was going to help us put a better light on our buildings to validate that they're sound and good enough for educational purposes. So at least partially, we are trying to eliminate that problem or that concern since we have brand new construction that will start soon enough. What are some other benefits of having the NEASC report with this frequency that should make us hold on to it, or are we at a point where we can say, you know what, we don't necessarily need a NEASC report any longer? What are your thoughts on that?
So there are several districts that have eliminated NEASC as an accreditation, and it is an area to consider, I think. In the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the accountability standards for schools and the accountability levels for schools, the oversight of schools is strong. So I think it's worthy of a discussion as to whether to continue with NEASC or not.
Okay. So it's something we should bring back to discuss? Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Any?
I just had some general comments, questions. They don't need to be answered now.
Sure.
It's just some things that I was thinking of as I read through this. On Standard 2, Indicator 4, that's on page 27, they were talking about that there is currently no curriculum template, which would make it easier for all teachers to kind of start to get on the same page. I'm wondering why that hasn't happened, or if there's a plan to make that happen, since it would make the work a lot easier. And there was also a recommendation that there's not enough time for collaborative time. to do that work. So I'm wondering how that would even be possible, and if that's something that the administration can start to look at. And then a couple more. On the next page, Standard 2, Indicator 5. When they're talking about sufficient time, appropriate support, clear communication, expectations for the curriculum review and revision. So it was kind of another, how can we plan to create this for our teachers? In order to create strong curriculum, you really need to work together, especially to have movement between grades. So I think that's really important. And then the next page, page 29, Standard 2, Indicator 6. If the new schedule isn't working, why are we keeping it in the high school? Would be my question, because honestly, it's been here, 2 years? Is it 2 years now?
Yeah.
And I just wonder, I mean, it's not the first time that it's kind of been brought up that people aren't really happy with it, and I'm wondering, because I came on right as that got approved and I wasn't really part of it, and I'm just wondering, is it really worth keeping? Is it?
Do you mind if I speak? I mean, I have some of the little mini report that I wanted to provide
I'm
all
sorry.
of you with this report, because there's actually a 5-page letter that you do not have in front of you that is very vital in terms of getting an actual picture of what the commission is asking of Granby Junior Senior High School. So again, NEASC, that it's a process, an accreditation that comes every 10 years that really involves 3 major parts to it. One is a self-study, one is the visit itself, and the third thing is the follow-up. Now for us, about 2 years ago, 2 previous superintendents, it was brought to our staff whether or not we wanted to continue with the process. It is it's an investment, it's a sum of money that, as you shared, some of the districts have backed out and decided not to forego. But about 3 years ago now, we decided that we wanted to move forward with it because we saw the means for self-improvement. We saw administration come and go. And as Emery alluded to, I know that we kind of focus on Standard 7, which is community resources for learning. And that comes with the infrastructure, and that comes with our buildings and so forth. But there's 6 other very important standards as well, from your mission to curriculum to instruction to school resources for learning, culture and leadership, as well as curriculum. Okay, so there's 7 really standards that we go by here. So the self-study, which is 2.5 years, really encompasses 3 parts to a self-study. It's 2.5 years, and when I came on board in 13-14, which was my first year here as a principal, we were already about 6 months, maybe a year into the process. We had developed our mission, we had developed our academic expectations and so forth, and we went full throttle moving forward. Now, in that time, Marie, we've had really 3 schedules, to be honest with you. We had a day 1, day 2. We had a drop schedule where teachers were teaching 6 courses one semester and 5 the next. And if you read the report, the unpleasantness of the schedule was based on, at that time, not the day 1, day 2, but it was built on the teachers were teaching 6 one semester, 5 the next.
Okay.
And that, if you recall, staff that's here, really resulted once out of every 7 days, twice out of every 7 days, without having a prep.
Okay.
So in last year, which would have been 14-15, we fixed that by going to 5. Okay, and so we've been doing that since. But even with that, we're looking at the schedule. So I guess where I'm going here is that the short of it is that we do have a 5-page letter, and my co-chairs are here, and they're willing to speak on a little bit about what the commission has recommended for us to do. But to be honest with you, and this is where it's very important, is that we've been put on warning, okay, which is something that we need to address. I need to write a letter to the commission by April of 2017 addressing 2 particular standards. One is curriculum, and one is community resources for learning. And in the report with curriculum, Marie, it actually touches upon what you said, is that we do not have any kind of common template in which we're able to build units of study, essential questions that go from one discipline to the next. Now, a lot of this work has been done in the past year or so, past 15 months, thanks to Dr. Houle. We're going to, we started a lot of work on curriculum last year. So we've made a lot of work in terms of looking at one template. There's still a lot more work that needs to be done in terms of trying to address this particular issue that we have here at the junior senior high school. And then the next thing, to be quite honest with you, is something that I'm not sure if we have an answer to. The one thing I was hoping was our 5-year capital improvement plan that we have in the works, where this year it was my understanding that we were to look at boilers, we were to look at doors. Next year we were to look at a leaky roof, possibly replacing the roof, and a lot of those things that we put in over the course of the 5 years that I can write to the commission saying that, no, we're not going to fix it overnight, but there's a plan to do so. Science labs, hopefully fields and gymnasiums and so forth. And they're all written here in the 5-page report that I think is very important that you are to see. And then lastly, to be quite honest with you, again, it was Standard 5, School Culture and Leadership. And to no surprise, there's a lot of talk around leadership and talking about, teachers and administration being on the same page and having it a stake in terms of important decisions being made here. And again, when we went with this, when we went with the accreditation, we understood and we recognized there was a need for self-improvement. We understand that there are some issues and some things here in the district that needed attention. And hopefully we can get all the important stakeholders at the table and address what this 5-page report has to say. For example, and I'll read it verbatim, the lack of autonomy for the principal in making decisions for the school, the lack of input for teachers regarding areas such as curriculum, scheduling, professional development, and budget. And third, the need for the principal to develop and communicate an overall vision for the school. So this is pretty clear language that the commission is telling Granby Junior Senior High School that it needs to address in a 1-year special progress report, and then a 2-year, and then a 5-year follow-up plan. That I have created, I've appointed 3 staff members, Mr. Bernash, Ms. Boardway, and Mrs. Swistat, to help me with the 2- and 5-year follow-up plan. And hopefully with the school committee, with the teachers, and with the community, we can get this done. Okay? I just wanted to be very clear here, but I do thank Todd and Chris for coming out here because they were the co-chairs in that 2.5-year process, working with my predecessor, working with myself, and finally getting ready to the September 2015 accreditation that we had. We have a lot of work to go from this report and from this 5-page report that we received back in April. So I don't know if Chris and Todd, if you want to come forward and maybe...
If you were to take a look at the document, the 5-page document, there's a list of...
Chris, do you want to come and join us?
There are at least 17 commendations that are addressed in the document, addressing things that we're doing currently that we're doing very well. These are all areas that I think are pretty much focused on teacher work, the things that we do in the classroom every day. There are 7 items that are listed as concerns, that are very specific concerns, but most of those concerns, I would have to say all of those concerns are outside of our control and are going to rely on a lot of funding. And I just don't know where we're going with that. That's going to make this report in April a very difficult report to write.
So to remove us from, excuse me, from warning, it is that stability and consistency of funding, which we clearly have not had, and the facilities. You talked about how NEASC, Emery, you talked about how NEASC can help to motivate around funding. Well, that only applies to this building. The work that is going to be done on the elementary school has no bearing on this NEASC report whatsoever. It is specific to the 7 through 12 model that we have. The third area around curriculum, you had some question. We've already got the template. We've actually satisfied much of the special report in that area, in that standard 2. It's not done, but it is in progress, and that's what NEASC wants to see. What is your plan, and how are you implementing that plan? And so, as far as what Chris said, what we as a faculty can control, given time and resources, we're in a good place.
Good. Thank you.
It's those things that are beyond our control that have to really be examined on how the community wants to go forward on those, and they fit into the larger issue that's in front of you as a school committee.
So this 5-page letter, will we get a copy of this?
Actually, the letter was sent to Emery, your predecessor, as chair. I noticed it was CC'd to Mr. Quesnell, and I made copies available for you, and I can definitely make some copies.
Yeah, great, thank you.
So, yeah, I'd like to review that letter and go through the report again with both
Yeah.
of them, and then get it back on the agenda.
The letter
and spend more
distills out
time.
all the 100 pages of specific items, and there are 7 specific concerns, and they also highlight some areas at the end that we're going to need to address by, at first, April 2017, and then again in
Is that all spelled out in the letter as well, the deadlines? and-
Yes.
Okay.
And we
So
have to
we're
make a
going to need more
report.
time, I think, for the future agenda item.
Right. Thank you all very much, by the way, for your work on this.
Incredible amount of
Yeah,
work.
it is a lot of work.
I'll just cut before you finish. It's just, I know, I've looked through this, and I know I feel confident that the staff, that all of you are working on this. I know this was last September, and I know the curriculum we've talked about too, and I know that curriculum's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're talking all subjects, which ones do you do? And I know you're well going towards that. And you'd always like to look at something and say, what's wrong with something? But I always like to view all the positive things, the 35 accommodations that are in here. That, to me, is what I heard at graduation on Saturday, and I continue to hear all the time. How about what we do well, never mind what we can't do well? Because this is not a perfect world. Everything isn't well, and you all know what you have to do better at, and you're going to work to do that. But in the meantime, you're forgetting all the good things you're doing, and that's what we need to focus on.
That's actually one of the recommendations.
Absolutely.
They were,
Yeah,
they
I
were
read that,
wonderful.
yeah.
They were wonderful, and
So
it's
that's
all,
my
and it's
positive
all
thing.
well and good for them to tell us that we need stability and funding.
And the report that we will send back in April, I'm not sure exactly what we're going to be able
Right.
to say, but there are 5 categories that we have
Right,
to.
but I mean, that's all well and good for them to pick on us for when they don't give us the funding, so.
Well, and I also,
It's
You know,
it's an independent.
It is.
They don't have
Exactly.
anything to do with it.
and I suspect that this is not going to be the first kind of report that they get back saying the same thing about funding and small towns.
From other-
and,
yeah.
We're not going to be the first ones.
No, they were not surprised by a lot of things. They were surprised by other things. What they continued to reinforce was how well our teachers do, in spite of.
Right.
And that was the wording that kept coming up.
Yeah.
In spite of what we're faced with.
That's what we hear
Absolutely.
over and over
Over
again
and
in
over.
schools.
I will offer one thing, and hopefully I don't say this the wrong way. This report, as I went through it, and there are some other occasions that this happens as well. Third-party folks, we work with them. They come in, they ask questions, and everyone is so cooperative. They just share and they, tell things to those folks that we don't share with each other. And I always wonder, what can we do to create that opportunity for all of us to have that conversation, regardless of whether we have those third-party folks coming here and asking us those questions? Because absolutely, the successes that are shared are the collective successes. We should celebrate those successes, and everybody should hear about those. Because without those, people look at the 4 walls and the building, and kids come in, kids go out, and for many folks that might be it. But there is a lot more than that happens here in this school system. And also we have some opportunities, some problems, if we don't want to really polish it too much, that we can share with each other. But it seems like sometimes we don't find the same comfort that we have with those third-party folks with each other to be able to sit down and say, here are some problems and let's just talk about it.
Well, the third-party folks are people who are in the trenches, who are doing the job that we're doing. They understand because the visiting committee is made up of people like us.
Right.
Who understand and know the job.
But I'm actually putting the onus on all of us, including us as well, that if the third-party folks, just by virtue of being in the trenches, they understand it better, just, we have to find out how we can do better and listen. Same thing with, everybody in the school system listening to each other. Because this is not the first time that this comes up, right? We have whatever that survey was that we went through. I forget all the survey names. It's an internal survey where we get feedback from the members of the school district, students and teachers. And
The Endicott survey? The TEL is the one that's done for the staff.
I think it's the TEL.
Endicott-
It is the TEL. We just look at it. We have the same reaction when we're giving our own feedback. And we don't have to talk to anybody. We feel free. We feel liberated, and we share. Let's just try to find that way to share with each other, because we're going to find solutions to our problems within this system, this school, this school district. In this room, more than likely, during some of the meetings, we have to talk to each other. So this is not at all just pointing fingers to anyone. In fact, probably I'm putting a lot of the onus on this side as well, that we have to find that way, and that's our hope and effort. How do we get to the point where we all get to the point where we trust each other, we can be transparent enough that we share the same input and feedback with each other to start solving some of these problems? But what Jim said is something that we do overlook all the time, and we should never ever overlook. There are a lot of great things happening in a little tiny school district. Some of which, again, mentioned at the graduation ceremony. I mean, what the students do, what the teachers do for them. You can tell, you can see, you can feel, touch the emotion because of that. Yet we are not able to, do the same thing when we sit down to solve problems. So that's an opportunity, I guess. We can do that.
So the question of, is this something that we should continue? And it relates to what you're talking about. When we were getting ready to start this, I wasn't all that excited about it because I didn't really have a great experience 10 years ago. And I volunteered as a co-chair to address some of those concerns. But what I ultimately thought about was how this frames the conversation in a way that no school district will examine themselves without that outside unless they are in very dire straits. We're not in dire straits. We have great things, and we have some things that need to be addressed. But without this, there won't be that kind of reflection based on best practice of our profession. And so that, I think, is the real value. And it took me a little bit of reflection, a little maturity from a young teacher to where I am now to see that that's the value of this process. I know there's an expense, both in labor and in monetary expenses, but it's something that should at least be on the table and considered for what the product is, because it does highlight all those great things and then gives us pause to say here.
It provides the motivation to talk about these things.
And the structure.
And the structure is very important.
All right, that's a great point.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you so much
You
for
don't
answering
wanna-
my questions.
Okay. Thank you all for the great work. I appreciate it. Okay. We have Chartwell's next
question.
Avery, I just want to ask, is the 5-page letter and the complete report going to be posted just to the school website or also to the town website?
Just the school website for now, because we don't really have any control over what goes on the town
Okay.
website. And it's all school related anyway, so.
A copy of the report is at the town library. Printed copy if you.
Okay. I asked for it Friday and I wasn't able to obtain a copy in town as a taxpayer. That's why I'm asking. And secondly, could someone, maybe one of the teachers here, before we move on to Cartwell, I'm sorry, could someone maybe tell us in layman's terms what exactly this NEAS report is? Because according to rumor mill, this could actually affect students' ability to move on to higher ed, is what we're hearing, if we fail this down the road. And I'm not sure everyone in this room understands that. I know there's a lot of teachers here who probably understand the value of this report and what it actually means, but I also know there's a lot of parents here who may not understand its complete.
All right. Thank you for the question. If we are able to answer that, let's do. If not, we can answer it later.
I can give it a try. So, Diana, just to answer your question, that all schools want to be accredited, all schools want to be accredited, and at the time I wasn't going to provide you that report because once again, out of courtesy to the school committee,
No, I
wanted the
understand.
school committee to see it and to address it first. So all schools want to be accredited. If they're not meeting the standards, the 7 standards, then they could be eventually put on warning. And then from warning, you go to probation, and then from probation, you could go to losing your accreditation. If you go to the NEAS website, you'll see schools that are on warning or on probation or that have lost their accreditation. And then that's where, as the saying goes, that if your school's not accredited, then you could maybe be putting your students in jeopardy in terms of applying to post-secondary institutions at the expense to other students that are graduating from high schools that are accredited. But at the same time, there are some schools that don't go through the process, that have backed out and are not an accredited school. So it's all sort of up in the air in terms of what a NEAS accreditation really means. I think back 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it probably held a little more weight than what it holds today.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Daniel. Andrew,
Hi.
how are you?
Andrew Stratton with Chartwell's Food Service.
I'm Mike Edgar. I'm the district manager who oversees Andrew.
We just thank you for letting us come today to give you an overview of the program, where we are financially and how we're looking for going into next year. I had handed out just a brief overview last year. The first column shows last year's meal counts. This year it was a bit lower. We've strived to bring it up and make it higher. We are still running a 60% participation. So within the school district, each day 60% of the students are purchasing meals, which is a fairly good percentage. Our breakfast has gone up 1.6% over last year, and we're looking to, we probably won't get as high as the 122,000 meals, but we're going to be hopefully get higher than this previous year. District revenues, as you can see, also fell off this year. Large part of that was a drop in enrollment without students here. Compared to last year, we weren't able to sell as many meals, but we're hoping to increase that for fiscal year 2017. Expenses have dropped. Food costs, obviously, if we're not purchasing the food, we wouldn't be having that as a cost. Labor, for the most part, throughout the buildings, we have a fairly small staff. Within the high school, we have the biggest one, but there's the same amount of lunch periods, the same length, so we haven't been able to reduce labor costs that much, but the other costs we have been able to keep in check. Last year, our loss for the year on our profit and loss was $9,889. We're projecting for the end of this school year a loss of $19,000. And looking at next year, there's still going to be a loss of about $10,000, depending on the enrollment or participation. Some of the things we've tried to do this year and I think that's what's kept the participation pretty much even from last year, is we brought in changed the kitchen staff and brought in a chef manager. He was able to put a little more on the food quality presentation. He's done a lot more interactive with the students, both here at the high school on a daily basis. We've also, the two of us have gone over to East Meadow, interacted with the students, got their feedback. We're able to make changes on the menu for the following lunch, and especially at the high school, there's more of a buzz on there's more culinary. The students are seeing more use of fresh fruits and vegetables, and even our a la carte. We've been able to increase our a la carte about 12%. Again, that didn't cover all the costs, but it has helped with the revenue. We bring in soups during the warmer months. We have low-fat ice cream during the warmer months. And we've changed some of the concepts a little, especially on we have a create station at the high school. And Chef Junior Martinez has brought some Hispanic foods in. We've changed things and had a burger bar where students were, select sauteed mushrooms, caramelized onions, jalapenos, whatever they wanted on their burger, and that seemed to go over well. So we're striving to bring up and keep participation high. And one of the main components of our program, not a lot of people have utilized, so this is a good time to bring it up again, is our NutriSlice website. From the district website, under the Chartwells and menus, You can click onto that, or there's a mobile app that you can use on your phone. And basically, all 3 schools' menu, breakfast and lunch are on there. You can hover over certain parts of the menu. It'll give you the nutrition on the specific item. You can select to choose different allergies, and I'll highlight anything that might contain an allergen.
It's actually better than that. On the desktop application, parents, nurses, students can actually select their allergen, and any menu item with that allergen will be crossed off and unavailable. So it really is an interactive live program. As soon as Andrew writes the menus, he links them to this website, and it's an absolutely free app to anybody for their desktop, for their mobile phone, for the menu information. Full nutritional information, a photo comes with it, and then they can actually see the allergens. So it's a great tool.
We've been working with the school nurses to make sure they're utilizing it. They're utilizing it for our counts for certain diabetic students. So it's been working well. We're just trying to get more people to know it's there and utilize it. Did you want to?
Yeah, well, obviously the impediments to this year, the lower enrollment, you can see the change in the district revenues, and that's by Andrew keeping the food costs and labor costs flat. The lack of revenues drove right to the bottom line, which created the deficit this year. Part of the recovery for last year, or for next year, is the additional item that I'd like to bring to the board's attention. The USDA mandates that annually the SFA review the cost of paid meals. And the USDA puts out a minimum, which is $2.78. And Granby's average, they ask you to use the October meal average, is about 10 cents light. These projections into next year are off of a 15-cent recommended increase. The last increase Granby had was over 3 years ago. It was 10 cents 3 years ago. At the rate the USDA is increasing their pricing, I'm recommending 15 cents, so hopefully we can not increase prices again for 3 years. They've been increasing their mandatory minimum 3 to 5% every year for 3 years. So at 10 cent, we'd be back asking for another increase so that the SFA exceeds their mandatory minimum, if that makes sense. And then Andrew gathered the information on the second page of our handout of the surrounding towns. We're looking only at the lunch pricing. We're not touching the breakfast. We don't recommend adjusting the breakfast pricing. And this is only the paid lunch price. The free and the reduced stay the same as the USDA.
So your projection for next year is including the 15%
Includes 15
increase?
cents for now, yes.
15 cents.
Every nickel is worth about $4,000 to the district.
So how do some of the other school districts that are smaller than us, how do they find a way to offer it for a cheaper price? As you said, I mean, a nickel doesn't sound that much in the grand scheme of things, but you know, when you pay for it every day, it costs.
That's recommended. The USDA, their expectation is if there is a deficit at the end of the year, that is recovered by a non-federal fund. I don't really know what that means. That's just what the Healthy, Hungry, Free Kids Act of 2010 outlines as the response.
And were you talking about a specific district?
For instance, Hadley. You know, just they have.
Hadley has always held their lunches fairly low, and over the last 3 years at least, they've increased it a nickel at a time. And I believe going into next year, if they were looking to, Hadley, they're up, going up another nickel. So they've been sort of doing a nickel thing. There's other school districts. I left off, Chicopee, Holyoke, Westfield, Springfield. They have a higher free and reduced, and some of them have been able to keep their lunch prices around $2. And they've been slowly going up because of lunch equity and not the U.S. government not wanting the free and reduced monies to offset costs for the paid lunches.
Are these other smaller districts also running in deficits?
Some are, some I didn't get the full details on how they were doing. I did sort of compare a couple of them or even look at our menus. I believe we have one of the best options, menus. If you look at some of the other districts around, say at the high school, they might have, 2 hot options and maybe a cold option, where we have almost 8 options a day, including, cold salad or sandwich, but numerous different sandwiches, other things. We try to rotate the variety a lot. So I believe the reason we've kept the participation at 60%, even though there is the shortfall of the budget, is the students are happy with most of the meals, or at least 60% of them are each day. And the variety that we have, even at the elementary schools, we try to have a sandwich or a cereal or a different lunch each day or each week, and then either a chicken, grilled chicken type salad, a cheese and veggie salad, along with the hot entree every day. And a lot of our items, we're trying to make sure they're as fresh as possible, and I think we use more fresh fruits and vegetables than some of the other districts do.
We did look at 3 other districts today, and the high school, the competing high school with the most number of alternate entrees was only 3. Now, they may have a standing pizza station or burger station that's not outlined on our menu, but Andrew's being modest. I use him and Granby as an example to my other districts, because they can struggle from 45 to 55% participation. Andrew consistently hits that 60% mark, which is outstanding.
So we're on the higher end.
Granby's on the higher end. And to consider, it's always a balance. It's Andrew's job to make sure there isn't overproduction of food and not too much labor to get it done. But we believe that it's the variety that's offered to the Granby students that keeps them interested in the food service program. But you're absolutely right. For somebody that, with 2 students, that putting out, think of buying meals 5 or 10 times a week, it does add up. It's a consideration.
I think the biggest thing, at least for me, was the realization that almost every year we're running a deficit. And that I did not realize that this year's deficit is going to be actually in the 19,000 or so level. The earlier conversation that you heard was related to our budget struggles. So, I'll be very honest, and I will tell you what I said at our last meeting. It doesn't really make any sense to me that we have a contract that we know for sure that will put us in a deficit every single year. I'm not saying that you're not doing whatever is good for the students, or that your food is not good. I'm just no judgment whatsoever on that side. I'm going to leave that part of the conversation to the side. Looking from a financial perspective, this becomes really unbearable, because year after year, and I'm going to tell you why it's unbearable, year after year it adds up. From our simplistic perspective, at least mine, let me just say it that way, the understanding was that we were looking at a contract that was, what do we call it, revenue neutral budget. Mm-hmm. And silly me, I thought, oh, that's great. We found a way to actually tweak those variables that you're talking about, whether it's the number of options or the price that we're charging, to get us to that revenue neutral level, which in my mind meant we don't have to worry about it. At least one less thing to worry about. And when you say that Granby has one of the more consistent participations that you are seeing, and one of the highest participations that you are seeing, I'm thinking, well, our declining in our enrollment is really no secret. I mean, we're projected, and we gave it to the state when we were coming up with the school building project. It's as far out planned as it gets. So I'm wondering, how can we mitigate this to not to have this? Because I'm coming to the big thing now. Without realizing that these were being added, now we are finding out that these were actually accumulating, and we have actually several years of deficits that are now put in front of us that says, well, we have, I don't know what the total number is, but just make it up, anything from $50,000 to $100,000 gap for so many years that accumulate. How do we find a way to actually mitigate this known deficit and make it affordable for the district as well? Because this year, 19,000 actually means the music program, almost. That, right? Next year, the 10,000 may mean something else. I'm not trying to put you on the spot and just, turn our problems onto you. But what I'm trying to say is that these numbers are really significant numbers for us, for our district nowadays. How do we find a way to solve this problem?
Andrew and I, we talk about the deficit, whether it's growing, how do we adjust the program on a weekly, monthly basis, not waiting till the end of the year. But there are two opportunities. One, to look to outside revenues. I've had success in other districts where we might do satellite foods to independent schools, Catholic schools, or camps. And we'll look for that. Since the kitchens are already here, we would talk to those groups, bring in the revenue, and deliver the meals. Granby's a little more isolated. I don't believe Andrew's had any luck contacting a group like that. We do look at the food cost as it grows 3.6% a year. His food cost has stayed flat for the last 3 years. That's a great job of engineering the menus so that they're attractive, controlling the waste, but the money's not going into the garbage cans. Same thing with the labor. As we've grown, as we change the labor, we're constantly looking to see if, and he mentioned schools consolidation or something down the road, how can we do more with less to mitigate those losses at the end of the year? And I do know that, I'm not happy with the $19,000 loss that's projected. Chartwell's is already in that numbers, our forfeited profit. We've already planned on giving back our management fee for that. But we need to do more going forward. And as enrollment drops, you can see the difference between last year and this year, how the revenue stream just dries up very, very quickly. It didn't help in 2010 when the USDA mandated the changes in the meal components, putting more money on the plate that students didn't want to buy. But we've recovered a little bit from that, but we have to adjust going forward and begin thinking outside the box. What else can we do?
Can you clarify, what do you mean you're giving back your management fee? To cover this 19,000?
No, Chartwell's charges a flat fee every month. The yearly total is $5,500. We've, in our financial arrangement with the district on a yearly basis, we project and we negotiate a year-end number. If that number is not hit, and there are circumstances that Chartwell's was responsible for, then we forfeit up to that management fee to credit the district back.
Well, just to follow up on Emery, I mean, this really hurts if it's, I'm finding out now that we have to cover, or the town has to cover, $20,000. I'm not happy about that. I'm finding that out now. It's June, and this is the first I hear of it. And I know I've seen things in the past of $190,000. Me and the finance committee showing deficit. We'd sit here and say, "What are you talking about here?" So unless someone's got wrong figures here, I'm not happy about this.
Can I clarify that again? And Emery, if you remember back when we met with the auditors, Mr. Everett and I met with the independent auditor, the chair of the Board of Selectmen, and Mr. Martin, where we talked about that issue amongst other things. And at that meeting, when it was brought up about the accumulated deficit in the food service, and I'm going to say deficits in quotes because every year that has happened since I've been here, I have provided documentation to the town to adjust for these quote-unquote deficits to wipe it out. And at that meeting, Mr. Martin himself said that, first Mr. Scanlon, the auditor, said, we were provided documentation showing of adjustments that were made to address this food service deficit. Mr. Martin's response to that was, and honestly, I can't go back all those years and recreate the history. So those deficits are there. That's not a school decision. We provided our documentation to address those accumulated deficits of $190,000. For various reasons down at Town Hall, those adjustments were not made. Regarding the $19,000 this year, if you look at your local budget, you have $10,000 budgeted for a food service contingency. We've put a freeze on overall spending to address any other all areas of concern, of which a $9,000 difference would be. So I do take issue with the accumulated deficit because I have been crying wolf or the Chicken Little, whichever one you want to say, about the fact that documentation, votes of this committee of addressing school deficits in school lunch have been sent to the town, and nothing has been done as far as addressing them far back to when they first started. We have done our due diligence to do that. The town auditor himself recognizes that. Mr. Martin recognized that and said he just can't go back and address those things from the beginning. Where
How
are we?
do we solve this then? Because
That was the purpose of that meeting, and Mr. Emery was there about it, and that we're discussing a plan for it. But to sit there and honestly, I have to say, not that I'm defending them, but to blame them for that is unfair. To say that it wasn't known by the committee is unfair. You took votes to address those deficits in prior years. I provided documentation to you. We've had discussions regarding this with Dr. Rodriguez. We've had discussions with this with the auditors and in the audit report. I cannot control what is posted on the general ledger of the town. I can provide, and I'll be more than happy to, because I have it, provide you the documentation showing exactly what it was done by the school to address these deficits that occurred in the previous year since we went to a food service management company.
But I guess I go back to my understanding from my history here is that we had a major problem when we were doing the food service ourselves. Once it went to Chartwell's, it was like, we're out from under. And then when this has happened this way, we sit back here and say, holy mackerel, what have we done here? It's almost even, nothing against anybody, but it's almost became worse than it was when we had our own food service.
But it wasn't, because each year previously, if I may, previously when we were self-operating, it was a $50,000 deficit each year prior to like the previous 3 years of my arrival, where then Superintendent Pat Stevens brought in Tom Scanlon to do an audit of the books to get a true understanding as to where things stood. $50,000 a year compared to $19,000, of which we have $10,000 budgeted for a school service contingency. And I would like to also, and it's somewhat, I'll say, touchy-feely, but stop thinking of this as a deficit. And this is coming from the finance guy. All the research is there regarding healthy initiatives, food, school lunch, breakfast. It's not a $19,000 shortfall. This is a $19,000 investment in healthy food for your kids.
So that's a very good point, but I will say it this way. From my perspective, instead of showing $10,000 deficit, which is a deficit is a deficit in finance, I would take that $10,000, add it to the other side, and see what the cost is going to be to the students, or what type of enrollment, what type of participation we're going to need to be able to cover the $10,000. We have no such scenario. That's one. The other thing is that I really don't want to, and that's why I didn't want to go back and just point fingers, for years past. I just mentioned that cumulative, because the most senior member of this school committee is me, and I don't really remember having had major conversations around annual deficit. That's why I was focusing on this year alone. I don't know that we really talked about a $19,000 deficit this year as we were discussing finances. Did we miss something, or?
No, because I look at it from a point of view, and I guess from the oversight of, I want to say, the management of the contract. We knew we had $10,000 budgeted. There have been constant conversations between Mr. Stratton and myself regarding operations and what, if anything, we need to do. The decision was made at administrative to, okay, with, again, the fact that the freeze occurred in the budget, and we just kept monitoring to make sure that we were, quote-unquote, on target. When you're looking at what you have for the shoestring staff of the food service, to be able to still provide the alternatives that are offered to the students here, we made what I thought was a sound administrative decision to keep the quality of the food service program as it was, what people were used to. If you want us to come back regularly and tell you where it stands month to month so you can make the adjustments, I guess that's your prerogative.
I think that's exactly what we want. That's probably why we have the monthly financial reports, right? We want to know where we are. That's why we keep on asking about actuals. That's why we want to be able to compare the budgeted versus actuals. And you and I had this conversation very recently as well, the significance of actuals. Aside from that, it doesn't really help us right now, because no matter how we put this, and I completely understand the quality aspect of it, this, on a year like this, fiscal year 2016, it's 19,000 plus that we are finding as deficit. Regardless of how we look at it, how we want to, term it, coin it, it is $19,000 deficit that we're finding out. Today is what, June 6th. And that is the part that we need to fix. And I think I would like to, mention one more time, when we had our conversation, my point is not really to point fingers, even though I do get worked up sometimes looking at things that pop up. That is the frustration, especially in a year like this. It should be frustration every year. But what I'm suggesting is, and that was my original question, how do we solve this problem? It doesn't make sense it doesn't make any sense to me, I don't know if it makes sense to anybody, that we are in a deficit every year, and then we're projecting a deficit next year too. If we're going to call it quality fee or something like that, even that sounds better than just saying, you know what, next year I know for a fact that I will charge you this much, and by the way, there will be this much deficit. To me, the way to look at it is, it's going to cost us, whatever the total is, I can't do it right now, but whatever the total is, plus $10,000. That's what it's going to cost us.
So we can budget for it. Because
so we can budget for it. That's exactly what it is.
And I
right
would
now,
say,
we can't do anything about it. It's $19,000 deficit that now we have to find somewhere.
And I would say also, one thing you said it just keeps hitting me in my head. Whether you look at it as we're providing healthy meals for our students, and I totally agree with that, but $19,000 and we're sitting here with all of these people here and all the town behind us yelling at us every day about what we're cutting. Mm-hmm. So $19,000 is not just, you're feeding your kids, that's great, but that's not the way to say it. Not in this situation.
But I mean, I will also say that when you look at the fact that there's $10,000 budgeted for the contingency and.
But that's $10,000 less than we need.
But it's a budgeted line item approved by the school committee so there's in a sense $9,000 that needs to be covered. Don't get me wrong, I'm with these people here, needing the fact that there's more that needs to be provided for the schools beyond $19,000 for food service. But what I guess I'm saying is that, and despite, we can, talk about the fact of not wanting to bring up the past, but Mr. Petras asked about the past. You did say that the deficits were accumulating upward between $50,000 and $100,000. That's the past. But I disagree with the past. Based on that meeting that we had,
yeah.
But again,
regardless of whether, Andy, I completely understand what you're saying, but whether we disagree with it or not, there's more than $100,000 deficit in that account. Is that fact or is that not?
It's unfortunately fact, but not.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
It's sounding like we're sort of putting their feet to the fire for these accumulated deficits that, in all honesty, were not deficits because we addressed them in those years. That's where I'm, maybe I'm coming at it from a different point of view, but, understanding that we don't like the fact that it's a $19,000 deficit, whatever you want to call it. The fact that we're talking about it with the fact that it's accumulated over X number of years, that's where I take issue with it because we addressed those. And they just weren't addressed on the general government side.
Yeah. But then it made us to see that this is where I get when we sit with the people, it becomes the schools, we're the one's fault for this. That's what bothers us. And they can sit there and not take excuses, but if it hasn't been corrected yet, then we're still going to keep listening to this all the time. Finance committee can tell, you did this, you did that. We're looking and saying, what are we talking about? What do you mean? We didn't do anything. And we find this stuff out that this is happening to us, but yet it's coming back as a negative to the school system. And we don't, you're right, I have to agree with this. We can't afford to do this. Food is good and so on, but we have people who are working with their kids every day in programs, and then we're losing people. This just doesn't make sense to me. It wasn't the whole process. And I'm sorry if we're going to blame fingers, but what happens? They blame us, we blame them. In the meantime, it goes on and nothing gets fixed. Mm-hmm. So if it isn't fixed yet, then it's going to be an ongoing issue. Yeah. Regardless of who we blame.
I think that's the gist of it. Just we have to find a way to fix it. Because allow me to say one more thing. Here's how I'm looking at it. Roughly adding these numbers together. For next year, what we're saying is this. I'll just go with 350, and 110 or whatever, just the numbers. I'll just add them together. 700,000 plus 115, let's say, 815,000, right? So for next year, we will have budgeted $815,000. And if we had not have this conversation, I actually appreciate that we're having this conversation. Now we have a different perspective on what's going to happen next year. If we never have this conversation, which is the reason why we should have it monthly, we should understand where we are and why we are having these deficits. We're budgeting for $815,000, knowing that at the end of the year it's going to be $825,000. But we don't know that because we don't see these details as we budget for that lunch line. We trust that the numbers that we're budgeting, at least in good faith, this is how much we're planning, we know we're going to be spending. This is telling me, no. We actually are budgeting 825, and by the way, we're going to be in deficit by another 10. So to me, it's 835, not 825. If we can get there, at least it addresses the problem of us misbudgeting a line item. That's how I look at it. I would never approve a budget, by the way, that has a hidden negative somewhere. And I'm only approving whatever I see on top of the iceberg that says, this is $500,000, and by the way, there may be a, $10, $20, $30,000 deficit, and we know it for sure because I'm projecting it. It doesn't make any sense as someone who's done budgeting for years. I don't know if it makes any, So again, this is not at all just. I hope it's not coming across that way. This is not just this wasn't 2 point fingers. This was actually specifically for us to understand why we have these deficits every year, and what can we do to mitigate this problem? Because it is a problem. It's,
So you mentioned there were some districts that didn't run deficits, and there are some that do. Do you?
Yeah,
do you guys
I don't
have
get
any
records.
theories or as to the difference?
Every
between
district is rather unique. Some are rural, some are urban, high free reduced, or low. The districts that run a profit right now seem to be in Fairfield County, Connecticut, where the selling price for the meals is $4 to $7, and that seems to be carrying the program. They have a very low, I think 0.4% free reduced. Granby is an example of a district that's in the middle of the road for that free reduced, and the change in the USDA guidelines eroded the revenue. If we went back to 2008, 2009, 2010, I'm positive we were right around a break even. Maybe we lost $500 in a year. But as soon as those guidelines hit, first off, students stopped buying school lunches for 3 years. During that time, enrollments began to plummet. So it was very difficult to come back to that same revenue stream. The whole time, food costs, labor costs were inching up. Andrew, what you're looking at is your replacement cooks. If the cook calls out of a school, this is it, because he doesn't even have anybody on an on-call position to call it.
I'm also running the East Hampton schools as well. So one day I had 2 chefs out, and I had to spend the morning in one at the high school in East Hampton.
But again, to go back to the districts that are beyond the break-even point, they have a strong breakfast program, mandatory breakfast program. Could be breakfast in the classroom, so that there are a higher number of students that eat, and that's revenue stream. Catering has gone out of this district, where a senior banquet was now at the Knights of Columbus, and where it used to be held here. But this district is carrying the general insurance for every single program, and I can't adjust that. So we're paying for an insurance program and a coverage that isn't being executed. But if we're looking at school lunches, field trip lunches, in-classroom pizza parties, those are the different revenue streams that not every successful district has. But it's very difficult now to manage that revenue stream. I know we're doing a great job managing the expenses, but with the erosion of the student body, there are fewer kids to attract into the cafeterias.
Do you mind if I go back to the options conversation that we had? Yeah. What is the impact of having more options than the average level that you see across the state? How much is it costing the program?
Our food cost is competitive with those programs. A program might only offer 2 entrees versus, let's say, our 6. Andrew's food cost is competitive with that. The danger you would have if you didn't have a manager and culinary team managing the production, you might have waste. You would have more food in-house, potentially going bad, for those daily options with the students. At that point, it wouldn't make sense to offer so many, be throwing it out at the end of the day and not having the students take it. But the danger you'd have with now restricting the options, and it's not to say we couldn't. We could survey the student and say something like, how would you feel about 4 entrees, not 6? Because then you might be able to control labor a little bit. Again, there's no savings on the food end, but I wouldn't want to turn students away from the program because they don't feel the variety's there. Our challenge nowadays is that, especially the young men, go home and watch the Food Network. They know what Bobby Flay is cooking. And we have to be as competitive as those programs, as competitive as the local mall might be.
And if our participation rate is 60%, which is higher
great.
than the
Great.
average
Yes.
for you,
Mm-hmm.
why do you think that is? Do you think it's directly related to the
I
number of
think Andrew has
choices?
struck a nerve with the parents. They know him as the face of the program. I think he communicates regularly with them, and I think people believe in the program. They know he's integrated the farm to school as much as possible.
What's the participation rate in East Hampton?
I believe it's 57
I
or
was going to say
something.
56.
And they are also, not off the top of my head, they are also running a deficit as well. And they don't have as much of a drop rate in enrollment. I mean, our budget was based off of 90 extra kids, so this whole year we were projecting more income. And then that we received that information last spring, and then through the year, we're trying to make more revenue to cover our costs. Our costs have been pretty the same on the food, on the labor. If we cut, say at the high school, cut one of the serving lines and only had one serving side, we could reduce labor costs, but we're not going to have the same revenue coming in.
And just so you have a benchmark in your head, if we take the enrollment drop of 90 off of our 60% participation, that'd be about 54, 55 students not eating in the schools just because they're not here. USDA reimbursement is about $3.11 over 171 operating days. You're getting closer to $35,000, $39,000 of revenue evaporated, not in the program anymore.
So if we did reduce choices from, say, 6 to 4, do you see that impacting the deficit?
I wouldn't know unless I survey the students. To me, great food sells itself, but we need to talk to the students all the time. I wouldn't want to surprise them with a change. They would need to have, and they should also have a say in what items we do sell. If we go from 6 to 4, I'd like to know, boy, that those 4 are in the sweet spot.
But do you have a rough idea, since you keep inventory and you have data around it, I'm assuming.
Every student eats pizza, burgers, chicken sandwiches.
So if you have 6 options on your menu, I'm assuming if I ask you the top 3, you would be able to say top 3, top 4. You have some ranking?
But if you look at this report, 3 of the programs that, the middle program Andrew instituted this year, the Thai noodles, the faux noodles, was a huge hit here, which surprised me. If you do some menu restructuring, we may want to make sure that is on rotation and not forgotten about, because I wouldn't want the students to think the program's still.
We could develop a committee with the high school students and the school committee member. We could do a number of things to address and see if you want to reduce the thumbprint of the program and try to reduce costs that way.
So it is, I don't want to stop the conversation if there are questions. Let me just throw this out. It is past 8 o'clock. I think what you just offered is going to be key. How can we balance that quality? And we absolutely don't want to say anything like, forget quality and we're all for the money. We want to make sure that, kids eat healthy, kids eat well and all that. But what is the balance? You have much more visibility and much more experience in this field that might be helpful for us too, to say, here are some options and let's just talk about those. That would be very helpful to us. Can we
I
do that?
would want to precede this by saying that because of this facility, the number of entrees here are already on the low side. if I look at Weathersfield High School or something like that, they almost have a dozen to 15 entrees available to students, but it's a much different facility. This is 2 lines, 2 shotgun lines with, basically 3 opportunities. So that's why there are 3 on each side and 6. But I think we can set up that survey, work with the superintendent and the principal, and start getting some data. Because I know we've taken up more than enough time.
Okay. No, we appreciate the conversation. That's good to know. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you both very much.
Thank you. We'll be in touch.
Okay. We have TMS next.
Yeah, I'm still here. Surprisingly.
Yeah. Come join us, huh? You good? Okay. All right. So let me just preface it this way, and then I will turn it to the school committee. We typically have this conversation in April, right? The TMS contract and stuff. This year, we did not. So we overlooked that. So we have TMS here to have a conversation around what we've done during the last year, what questions we may have, what opportunities we may actually have. I think this is something that we wanted to talk about. We did. Remembering that we have this conversation again in April, and it allows us to have a few months to dig into some details and then have a conversation around contract. But remember that the TMS contract is actually due at the end of this month, our annual renewal of the TMS contract. So with that, I just wanted I had a conversation with Andy before. I don't want to dominate this conversation as well. So I'm going to open it to you all first, and then we can go with that. All right.
I'd kind of rather you get started.
Okay, I guess I'm going to get started. So here are some challenges that we had this year. During our budgeting process, which was a challenging process, for all of us, we realized that we were looking at different numbers, and I share this with you, almost every meeting. I think I can even scratch the word almost, but I'll just go with almost every meeting, just the target was moving. Part of it is things change. The way we'll look at things change. But part of it was probably big items that we did not include in the budget as we were calculating. They made those major differences. So here's the thing again. My intent is we already have a budget that we approved. It's a horrible budget from a perspective that there are a lot of things that we had to reduce, at least for now, that is listed next to that approved budget number. If we do not get this much support, this is what we're going to be looking at in terms of reductions to positions, services, materials, what have you. What is one way, 2 ways, 10 ways that we should be looking at our budget that will allow us not to repeat the same errors? That's the going forward part of it. The other thing that I actually, I didn't want to be the sole candid speaker here, but I mentioned this to you, and again, someone who's coming from the service sector side. There is a service, and those who actually pay for the service expect certain things. How do you evaluate what happened this year, so that maybe we can start with that. My intent, again, is not really just because it's not going to get us anywhere. As I told you, we either, as a school committee, we either vote to extend a contract, or this is true for any services that we hire. My intent is to find out the way, to solve some of these problems that we encountered and had in our budgeting process this year. Is it fair?
Sure.
Okay.
So I guess I would say a couple things. One, I do appreciate this discussion, and I'll say that our struggle for the 8 years that we've been here, I say quote-unquote struggle, that might be too strong a word, is it's the balance almost of how much detail do you want versus, what is overkill versus what, I mean, there have been times I remember when I was sitting here, we made changes in personnel because of the, trying to improve communication in between the town and the school. But I remember when I was here, I would provide reports, and then we would be told, that's not what we're looking for. That's, we'd come back with a different version. That's not, can we look at something like this and stuff? So, we are a proponent of, without sounding like a cliche, of best practices from the Association of School Business Officials, from the State Department of Ed. I'm a member of the Association of Governmental Accountants. I'm a certified government finance manager, and I'm nationally certified as a school business administrator. So what we're bringing to the table is kind of stuff that is, I would say, best practices regardless of where you are. The struggle is, though, you've got other things on your agendas that you want to talk about. So I'm addressing the communication at first. I would love to be able to show you and walk you through everything. And to, we tried that once with Dr. Rodriguez of having like a budget workshop session and, made ourselves available to try and work around everybody's schedule so they get an understanding. We've got we put together a manual of all those resources so that, with our other clients, we provide it to them saying, everything you want to know about budget, but we're afraid to ask, it's in this 3-ring binder. A lot of it, some of it is theoretical, but what we pride ourselves on is taking that theoretical and putting it into the practical. Now, regarding the issues of the past year, I would say the district has been in some significant transition, to state the obvious, of between the funding sources from the town, from administration turnover, and then when you had Dr. Houle as the interim superintendent, I actually quite honestly think, my opinion, that maybe she tried to do too much in getting the district quote unquote back on the right track. I think maybe you all tried to do a little too much because everybody was passionate. They want to see this district succeed, and this is a really good school district. So how is it that we as TMS could help you along the way? It's really to kind of, say what came to light, I would say, are some, things that we're going to improve on internally regarding not only here, but in our other districts. And, so in our discussions, my business partner and with the people here, Mr. Donahue and Dr. Houle, I'll pass this out. This is sort of the, I'll say, a game plan potentially going forward that we would like to, discuss with you. And so what has come to light, I would say, is that there are some things that, as far as the budget development, the changes that were going on, some I would say it's the siege mentality of operations, and that we were trying to get you, every time you want to talk about budget development process, as accurate information, I say timely, but almost probably too timely. Every time that something changed, we wanted to give you the most up-to-date information. I got to tell you, in my opinion, a school of thought I've done in our other districts is there are differing measuring points that occur during budget development. You have the House 1, that's the governor's budget. You have the House Ways and Means. You have the House budget. You have the Senate budget, Senate Ways and Means. At the same time, you have things operationally that occur during your April 1 is called a special, we call it the move-in date. And those are for the special education students that you would be fiscally responsible for those that are on your rolls at that time. We can continue on the budget development process and quite honestly just hit those benchmarks as far as timelines go. Instead of every school committee meeting coming back to you with an iteration of the budget, he can provide you summaries and stuff, but it's sort of that thing, is like, it is such a fluid process. Numbers change, as Emery said, all the time. Now, numbers changing because of error, unacceptable, which is why you have this. You know, and I'll say this, the cliche of the buck stops here, regardless of who made the mistake, it's on you. You know, so that's one of the things also we, I would say, pride ourselves on, is that my partner and I are coming from the accountability world where we hold ourselves to a higher standard. And when that standard isn't reached, shame on us. Going forward, we've got ourselves a plan in place to, you know, address any and all concerns. I want to work with you to determine how, as far as the information sharing that you feel you need so that you can make these decisions, hoping that they will be in better times. You know, so we can, quote unquote, I say, put the mistake discussion aside. That mistake was made, should have been caught. It wasn't. It was caught in soon enough in time for us to continue on the budget development process. Here's our suggested plan as far as internal. If you look and see, you're going to have 4 resources available to you for addressing your operations to ensure that, and that's, should we go forward, that's at no additional cost to the district.
So I have a question regarding the error in the budget. Have you done an assessment within your own organization, you know, kind of a forensics, to determine what went wrong, where it went wrong, and to make sure that going forward it's not going to happen again?
Yes. And that assessment is the outcome of that assessment. That it's, you know, we have to have, you know, 9 different sets of eyes, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, in looking at things to make sure if you're going public with a document, you got to make sure that's still information. I'm not stating anything that in all those areas that we're licensed or members of, is, you know, you don't need to be a certified school administrator to know that.
The significance and importance of having continuous visibility into the budget. In fact, there are many of them, just let me list them this way. One is, one of the few things that the law tells us we are accountable for is the budget. Mm-hmm. So, I'm going to say something, hopefully it's not too exaggerated. I believe I spent more time on this particular budget than anybody else. Anybody else, including, you or anybody else. And I will just make this without any exaggeration. I spent many nights, long nights, by the way, into morning hours, trying to understand what meant this, why this. And here's why. Not because I really wanted to waste my time on an Excel spreadsheet and just trying to balance numbers. This year, we're having all these conversations around a few $1,000s, saving a program, saving a teacher, saving materials, saving this, saving that. And I know that errors happen, and I will be the last one to say, oh, I'm going to go and blame human beings for making errors. When you have spreadsheets, when you have this and that, errors will happen. My concern is, what are the safeguards that we're putting into place to catch those errors? Number 2, regardless of all the individuals that will be pouring into these different areas, how are we going to measure success? We're trying to do the same thing for our school committee, and we're going to have a couple of meetings to self-evaluate. We did not do everything the way we thought we should have done or we could have done either. So we're going to self-evaluate. That's why I just asked you that way. What are some of the, call it metrics, measurements, safeguards, whatever it is? How are we going to hopefully eliminate those issues, errors, whatever it is, so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where, well, this meeting, it's like mood swing. This meeting, I'm so happy because now I see that there's a couple of $100,000 more here that then we don't have to reduce this and that. And next meeting, it just goes to $900,000. The following meeting, it comes down to $300-something thousand. The next meeting goes to $5,000, which is our final point. So that mood swing, believe me, was one of the most stressful things that I went in my volunteer work. And I've been doing volunteer work for decades. This was the most stressful. So what I'm trying to understand again is, how do we measure this? I mean, what am I looking at, or what are we looking at next year, meeting after meeting, that will say, you know what, here's where we are, and here's the measurement of our success. This is what we know, this is where we are, this is what we had planned, and this is what we have against it.
So I guess I'd say, first of all, regarding your mood swings, if your mood swings were those because of these errors, or were the mood swings because of just the normal budget changes? I mean, those
Two of them were due to major errors.
Okay.
Yes.
So, right, and I agree. So that's
Yeah.
off the table because we own it. We're going to go forward again. Should we choose to? You choose to. And you've got you want to, as far as metrics go. In the last bids that were done here for us, there is an evaluation instrument that, or not an instrument, but it was said that the superintendent has the right to evaluate us. Admittedly, honestly, we've never been evaluated here. The way that it apparently has been, I would say somewhat punchy, is that if we weren't doing what it is that we were expected of, you wouldn't renew our contract. That's kind of what it is that our other clients have said, is that, you know, if you feel we need to go in another direction, then you'll know. Because April, we won't tell you, or we'll tell you that you're not going to be here. Our contract was up this year anyway, so that's also a moot point as well. But as far as if you should choose to go forward with us, I would also, you know, the 8+ years we've been here, I think if you to look back and look and see that there is a pretty significant track record of success here in this district. You know, I would hate to see that go by the wayside when you look at things that have been done that, you know, we hold ourselves to no different a higher standard than a lawyer does as far as vigorously defending the best interest of the client. That's why when things that we talked about earlier, as far as disputes with the town, we're sharing everything. That's why I'm no longer here. Is because I was told that officials in the town cannot sit in the same room as me.
That's news to us.
Yeah, that's
news to me.
us.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm sorry, but that's, you know, so fine, you know, so we make a change, I bring in someone qualified, you know, now we have 2 people qualified to do it. And if indeed, but if you look and see, I'm back. I'll be back, you know, and we'll just go ahead and work with that and stuff. So, you know, you look and see what it is that we bring to the table. It's warts and all. We're having a discussion about mistakes that we made. Okay? Yeah, I hate it. Believe me, I hate it. Mr. Dunning knows I hate it. Dr. Who knows I hate it. You know, so we have things in place to make sure that it doesn't happen again. You know, as far as measurements go, take a business manager evaluation. There's plenty of them out there. Evaluate us. We're your business manager. Use whatever tool you want. We post monthly to our company's website reports that show the status of your local budget, your grants, your revolving accounts. It's there, and it never goes away. We've tried at times with the previous administration, not Dr. Gould, but Dr. Rodriguez before, to have that go on the school's website to varying degrees of success. But regardless of whether or not, and we can actually go and look and see who's looking at it and stuff, it's there on our website. So for people to say that we're not, you know, we're trying to come to a school committee meeting and talk about finances and get you comfortable with where things are, willing to make changes as to how it is that where information is presented. And if that's not working, then let's have a dialogue as to what it is that you want. You know, I could spend an entire night talking about this stuff. You don't want to talk the entire night about this stuff, but it is stuff that clearly you need because of your controls and your roles and responsibilities. You need to understand. We want to be that conduit of information for you so that you can, when you're out at the soccer field, the baseball field, or what have you, someone comes up to you and asks a question, I heard this. To either be able to say, oh no, that's not true, here's what's going on, or call the school. You know, they have the answer and stuff. Rest assured it's being addressed.
Andy, I personally feel confident that regardless of the mistake, I feel confident personally, I'm not speaking for anyone else, as we go ahead with the changes and what you're going to put in place there for working with us. My other question is that even though when you're working with us for 1 or 2 meetings a month, how about the day-to-day operations of the school system, working with the administrators, the people in the central office, our superintendent? How can you just talk a little bit about Is that, any changes there coming? Is it working for our people who work with you, who need you on a regular basis
I'd
for
say
their
the
budgets?
past- The past, I'd say 4 years, it hasn't. Because it has been such, I'd say, financial turmoil, if you will. And the fact that, quite honestly, we're dealing with an archaic accounting system. The fact that your administrators who have budgetary authority do not have access to your accounting system is a shame. Now, I know the town is moving forward in software.
Is that all changed now, hopefully starting? Because we've heard
I'm
that 2
hoping.
years ago.
I asked one clarifying question because I know one of the things that you probably heard out in town was that the school needed to get its accounting code structure set and hasn't done that.
It was all again coming back on the school.
I've sent to Mr.
It was all the
Martin-
school's fault, which I'm
I
sick and
said,
tired of hearing.
I have it all mapped out. And I said, I just wanted to have clarification that the segment codes that he had sent us originally, that nothing's changed. If nothing's changed, we're good to go. It's all mapped out for every account range revolving, et cetera.
Starting July 1st?
I would like to think so.
Do we have trainings
We will,
set
obviously.
in place and have
Nothing,
started
again, that's
meeting?
something unfortunately I can't speak to because that's being handled through the town, obviously.
But going back, so you're going to work on the internal things
Yeah,
with our
I want
administrators
to
and
make
central
sure that when
office?
time
Okay.
comes that, that for those that have access to software, that the system's being used, that Mr. Cavallo has access, Ms. Champagne has access, everybody that has budgetary control has access to software. They're going to need to for being able to enter electronic requisitions, which is going to bring us finally into, I want to say, the 21st century. I mean, so things like that. Admittedly, previous years it hasn't because of the way that between, and if you even think back to when you were at East Meadow, I mean, we froze the budget come October.
I spent it anyway.
You spent it.
I just spent what I didn't have.
Mhm.
But
as
so
far
much
as
of that
the-
was happening too.
The day-to-day stuff, it's one of the things where, especially with the advent of technology, we have, between, the three of us and the four of us and stuff, everybody in our company, if you want to know, I mean, we have access to all the records so that, when we all have our Granby email accounts and if there are questions, and then honestly, it's, everybody's got access to our cell phones, and so we tell our employees, we're paying for your cell phone, you better be using it, so it's that type of thing, and it, the cliche of no stupid questions really is. I mean, there are times in here, I would say, and in our other districts where I've answered the phone on Saturday. I think back to, I got in trouble, and I'll admit this, that I got a call from a vendor when we did the boiler replacement regarding what was the result of the bid, and it was while my wife was in labor, and I took the call. So even Pat Stevens at the time said, "Don't ever take the call." So.
And what are how many days a week are you in the office as
I mean,
part of the contract?
the way that it was contractually was 1 day, but honestly, Mr. Dunning comes here 2 days a week. We're going to send out Dr. Who will be here, and then Mr. Chapis, a reference, will be here at various times. Some days they may be here the same day, some days they may not. So.
But there's standard dates so our administrators know when you're in the office to have a face-to-face rather than email or phone call.
Yes. And we're flexible enough to change it. If there's enough notice ahead of time that somebody wants to meet differently, it's no different than someone notes if their calendar says I'm available on a Friday. We'll come on a Friday.
I'm curious with the way the numbers just continually change, literally from day to day, over the last 3 or 4 months. Where are we in line with other districts that you work with?
As far as when you say that, as far as next year's budget?
No, just
or
as
just
far as
overall
just
operation-wise?
constant moving target, constant change in iterations of the budget.
If you were to, when we go through and do our training, and it's again sounds like a cliche. Despite, I would love it if a budget was a static. Almost, you set a budget and the Ramco Peel set it and forget it. But the budget's a plan and plans change. So if you think about it, we started this budget development process almost a year before it's actually going to go live. And when I say go live, I mean September 1.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to say that after the town meeting, the administration is going to completely rebuild this budget from the ground up, because we'll start to know information like grant numbers will become final. We'll know things about any teachers that might have left or what have you, and then other things regarding some other operational things that might have come up as far as savings here or there, or special education costs, what have you. I mean, so we end up in a sense, I say quote unquote, rebuilding it from scratch within the confines of whatever it is that's appropriate at a town meeting. You know, but those changes are, I have to say, it's unfortunate, it's part of the course. That is the reason why when we get that reform. That's why I know town officials get somewhat jealous, I would say, of the fact that school districts have such flexibility when it comes to their budgets. In order for a town department to transfer funds from one expense line to another, they can't just do it like we can here with your school community policy. They have to go and get approval from the board, formal approval.
So, unless there are other questions, at the very least, the criteria for success in my mind is that as the committee that approved the budget, we should have regular updates on where we are on the budget in a way that we can understand and digest, because all 5 of us are working on something else during the day. So we only have so much time, and we should not have to spend that much time to decipher it. And I will challenge something that you said in a friendly way. I should not have to go to your website and look for information that is relevant to our school district. If it is truly, in your mind, relevant to our school district, hopefully you share it with us. I mean, again, this is a service contract, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we should look at it from that service perspective. But I'm curious to see, and hopefully we can have more conversations, how we're going to make this structure work in such a way that's going to benefit not only how we work together, but how we put the budget together, so that we don't just keep it. And you and I talked about this too. This is not just a numbers practice, which we did it again this year to an extent. We have to look at it from our vision perspective. This is where we want to be. This is what we want in our school district. This is the cost of it. Then we start, right? We don't get the opportunity to do that when we constantly chase the numbers. And whether it's due to errors or changes, whatever, we need that education, that information that is provided to us. So hopefully we work with those parameters, and we have these. And I will actually make sure that we have a formal evaluation process next year. Not because of this conversation, but we should have it. We have an evaluation process for everything. We should have an evaluation process as opposed to having this almost boundless.
And I think all of us on the school committee would agree that we need a narrative when there's a change in a particular line item. We need the narrative. Because I'm not an expert on a budget. I'll be the first to say it. I say it all the time. So interpretations are really helpful for me. If you start to see trends, that would be really helpful.
And those are the things I think that and again, welcoming this discussion and future discussions regarding that. To me, it almost screams again of a workshop. What is it that? Because I'll be honest, this is not unique to even those that know budgets, and from private sector, public sector, and I would love it if it mirrored the private sector. But again, it's just such a different beast altogether. But at the same time, so then what is it that we can do? I mean, just to help me help you, help us help you as far as what it is and stuff. Is we are willing to provide you anything and everything that you need. It's just a matter of if you think about the past, and I'm going from when I was here and stuff that I think about, and it's not a criticism. It's, so it was give me a chance. Let me see what it is if I can put, So one version I did it by DESI function code. Administration, instructional services, provide a little bit of a narrative as to where things are, and then we wanted something different. And then we provide you with, when you say the line item changes, and if you were to look at the actual chart of accounts for schools, it's massive. and so I don't think you want that level.
No, I
So
don't
it's
want a
that type of thing
$500 line item change,
Right.
but if
I
there's
know,
a
but you know what I mean? It's like that type of
$50,000
thing where-
swing or
Right.
something that is,
That's
you know,
looking really
meaningful.
bad. Or
Yep, and I agree. I mean, but it's that type of thing though. What we need, in a sense, to come to a consensus as to what is it that, can we meet everybody's needs? Maybe not to the same level, but we want to make sure that we are at least trying.
I think part of it, and I was going to ask for another workshop. Part of it is the last workshop you did was actually right before Deanne and I got on, and we did sit with you one day. But I mean, so we kind of get dumped in head first, and we just have to figure it out. And Jen is even more new than us, and so I think, and it doesn't matter how long you've been here. I'm sure another workshop would not hurt. So. To me, a workshop would include, first of all, especially for Jen, who really needs even more help than Deanne and I. I work with education budgets, so I'm okay. But even so, I look at the sheets and I go, okay. I think that a workshop would help us to actually come to that consensus together instead of trying something every couple of meetings and in essence, you get annoyed at us because you're like, now they want something else. I mean, not that you do. I'm just saying, come on. We all work with people,
Sure.
And it can be frustrating for us because we have other things on the agenda, but also we really need to understand what's going on so that the conversations we're having with people in town don't make us sound like we're idiots, because we're really not. It's just all confusing.
Right.
So.
And I go in, I say this again, someone I say tongue-in-cheek comment, but in some of our districts that were, when we started off, that were in the situation that Granby is in now, it's very rare that we are brought into a district that's running well. Perfectly. 8 years ago, it just happened to be a transition time when Pat Stevens brought us in and stuff. But at the same time, we are usually brought into a district that is struggling for various reasons. Some of those districts that we are hired in now, it is like pulling teeth for us to get, it's like we'd like to talk to you about finance, but everybody's gotten to that comfort level of knowing that, okay, you get a report from TMS, I can see where things are, I see the trends, it's been highlighted, or what have you and stuff, and then everybody's comfortable. Doesn't mean that we're going to sit there and not say anything, but we want to get you to that point where it almost becomes a fact that, yes, the budget's important, but what's important is what you're seeing sitting here in the audience of talking about programs and what is it that you want for the education of your kids. I'm the one that says that every time it comes time for presenting a budget document, it shouldn't be about the numbers. Again, stating the obvious, but it's unfortunate that it comes to that.
From an educational perspective, what we're looking for is fine. But from an operational perspective, the ideal case is that whatever is presented to us is accurate, is basically what we need, and then we go with that. So we don't, just because we're educated, we don't have to go and just dig into every single detail to find out whether or not it's accurate or not. And in some cases, unfortunately, like this year, to find out that they're not. That's where I'm going with that. Otherwise, I do appreciate that we should have another workshop. There is really, value in that. But we should also understand that this is a service that we're expecting to have with the highest quality, and that's what I'm talking about when I mention metrics and other measurements to make sure that we are on the right track. Otherwise, collaboration is a great thing, but this is not you're not collaborating with us just because you love us so much. There is, at the end, this is a business, right? So we have to keep that in mind as well.
And I would say, as far as when you talk about the accuracy and stuff, I mean, the internal controls that we have internally in our company, I would say are quote unquote second to none, even with this error that happened. It's if you look and see, I mean, yes, we are all human, but it's one of the things where take it off the table because we've addressed it, and we've addressed it in our internal operations that we're going to take to our other clients. But secondly, I will say, as far as overall operation-wise, this is where we start to get into that delicate dance of, when we talk accuracy, let's take reconciliations with the town. It has just been in recent history that we've been getting regular monthly reports from the town for us to even be able to reconcile it. The past 2 years, I think. But if you think about it, 6 years prior since we've been here, we weren't getting that. And I know Mr. Petrus and the other administrators at the time were getting, everything like bank statements regarding student activity and stuff. And so, we end up going in and have to do that balance of, I feel comfortable with the internal controls both within my company and honestly within the operations of the school. Because I know there have been times that Champaign, when I was here, would, email me and say, I'm looking here, I think I've got this amount of supplies, or can I do this? And then I would either meet with her, or we talk on the phone, something, so that we might be off a X number of dollars and find out that there's a purchase order that's still open that doesn't need to be, or what have you. I mean, there is that type of internal controls where it is that we can feel with confidence that we're going to get it down to the penny. No, because it's always, but come June 30th, I say with confidence, and again, despite what you might hear around town, we have never overspent the school's budget. Never. Revolving accounts, the school lunch issue, I will go to my grave regarding that. So things like that I'm saying that we go and we talk before about these things. I end up going, when I go and bang my head against the wall with the auditors regarding things, showing them documentation, and then when I see the financial statements come back that it's still there, and then it's, that type of thing. So we will take this lesson, and should you choose to continue with or going out to bid for our services, you can have nothing but, I would say, faith and confidence, knowing that what you see in front of you, albeit somewhat basic, I would say is very powerful. And you can see what it is that you're getting regarding the level of attention to your district.
Any other questions?
Well, I think the issue that you're speaking to brings up the larger communication issue that needs to be worked on in the town overall between the various departments.
Right.
Because what he's speaking about is we weren't even aware of was happening.
Right. And that's agreed.
So going forward, that is something, if you think the school committee needs to know, then that has to be
part of me, I think
communicated.
also was, I'm looking at it from a point of view of everybody's got personality conflicts. I go home sleeping well at night knowing that what we're doing here is nothing but the best interest of the district in our mind. So if somebody doesn't want to talk to me about something, then, so I'm a big boy. And I don't want to feel like I'm coming running to mommy or daddy complaining about it.
That's not what I mean.
I know.
What I mean is we can't address. To me, it's all about communications, and we can't address a communication problem if we don't know it's happening.
Right, we're not paying.
Especially something as large as the budget,
Mm-hmm.
and as this 190,000, whatever it turned out to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a small amount of money.
I think that's where I have a problem, Andy. It's us finding out about those problems is actually what's going to help us. If a conversation happens in the background and we don't know about it, we cannot do anything about it. So I'm happy that you're sleeping well and all that, but it doesn't help us because we start losing sleep when we find out that due to some lack of communication somewhere else, we are now in hot water.
Well, and an even bigger issue goes to what Marie was saying, is that at the end of the day, we then look like a bunch of numbskulls. Well, what do you mean you don't know? This is something you should know. Well, I agree. It is something we should know.
And I agree with you. All kidding aside, one, I'm not sleeping well, but two, if we want to talk about this issue, that's the reason why, if you remember, and some of you, and if not, but if you were to go back and look at the minutes, we had you voting to transfer funds from local budget or from the school lunch revolving account to cover those deficits. There were votes that were taken. But so, to say, quote unquote, that you were not aware, maybe I would say it wasn't necessarily you weren't aware, but you were anticipating that it would be addressed because a vote of the school committee is an action that should be taken. On the school side, we took that action. You
And I
know,
think
so-
that's exactly what we're saying.
Yeah.
We actually vote and approve without really even understanding what is underlying, because we don't have such details. And that is the big danger there. Because then the moment it's obvious to us, it's too late to act. It's after the end of the fiscal year. Now you
And
have to and the
is
auditor
sending a
now
letter
is just
or-
yeah, exactly.
We haven't
And
seen,
I-
we've never seen, I've never seen the audit report.
Right.
We have not been given the audit report since I've been here, and I've been here, this is my 4th year starting. I've not seen those audit reports that everybody talks about. So where are they?
Well,
Do
this
I have to
usually
go
come
plead
out
for
soon.
them?
Yeah.
So we could see, and then that makes us more aware of what's going on. And I'm sure some of these other transfers, I don't remember, and I don't remember everything, but I think sometimes there might have been a large amount that was just put in, but it wasn't spelled out. It wasn't like a vote for 100,000 for this, 50,000 for this. It was, so then
Kinda bunched
obviously
into
it
a
got
bunch of
bunched
different
in
things.
and, went over our heads. I'm not saying that, but that issue with that 190 and this whole school lunch, that's all I hear about. I feel like I got to put my armor on because, and no one takes responsibility for it. And again, I think, I'll be the first one to say is we need to sit with the town administrator, some school committee, and the board of selectmen sitting there and get this on the table and stop this nonsense. People are being paid to do a job, and it just continues on and on and on, and it gets thrown in our face. And I'm sick and tired of that.
I will say, and regardless of the disputes or what have you, and I don't want to speak for Emery, but when Emery and I met with the, I think it was a productive meeting.
It was.
I would say it was a very productive
Well,
meeting.
at least for the first time, I realized what was going on.
So
good, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
So I would say that it was productive and that there was discussion about a game plan going forward. So I would like to think that we're on the right path for that. I just, I didn't say anything at the meeting because it was, again, I would say productive, and I thought anything that I would say regarding the history would have been counterproductive. But I do, again, when there's the potential of my company's reputation on the line regarding the service that we provide, I will be darn sure to make sure that anything that's said about us is only said accurately.
I think one thing that happens from my point of view is, and I think you would agree with this, that sometimes when you're doing a job and it's your business, so this stuff flat. You probably dream about it. It's in your head. You've learned about it. You've been doing it for years. A lot of times, I teach a communications course, and one of the things that I teach is we make assumptions as humans that somebody else sees what's in our head. It's not true. And so I think very often what has happened is even Archie is explaining something to us, and we don't have a lot of time, and so I might have questions, but I'm still processing and trying to formulate things. And then I go home, and then it's like 2 days later, and somebody in town asks me a question, and I'm like, yeah, I was kind of thinking that too. Because you guys know this stuff, and it's like just knowledge to you. But it's not always, and I work with school budgets, but it's not always knowledge to us. And I think that's part of that communications piece, is remembering that we're not all budget-wise. And not only that, people in town don't always understand school budgets as well. And so we have to answer to them. And also they're watching it on the camera. And I think it's about the communication. And so maybe how things are explained to us to help it be a little smoother so that we really do understand what's going on and not just say, okay, really what's been happening is we trust you and we vote on things because we trust what's happening. We trusted Dr. Houle and hoping that everything goes well. But in the end, we're responsible. So really the buck stops here. And so from my point of view, I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I would like the communication to be better, and maybe don't assume that we know what you're talking about, because we may not.
Absolutely. And I know that if you were to ask one of my flaws, and I do have them, has always been trying to find that delicate balance. I've always been one of the economy of words, and then, or the other extreme of just overkill of information. So, that's why I think a workshop would be very good and helpful for both of us, all sides, as far as how can we work to make sure, and that you're comfortable And then also we can talk with you, and if you want to get down into the weeds of reconciling and accuracy of information, here's how we're doing it.
I'm sure Emery would love to go into the weeds with you.
I think he has been.
I think he has been.
We fished him out.
Oh, yeah.
And then he can report
Free
back
time.
and dumb it down for the rest of us.
Okay, so we're running real late.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Andy? Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
So what do we want to do? Just do we want to, if what we have is good for us to say we're going to renew it, we can do it tonight and just vote and be done with it. And have continuous conversations around our budget and
Do we get to
process.
see the contract, or is it?
Actually, that's a very good question.
Because
We saw it last year.
We did.
But I mean, if we're going to vote on a contract, to be honest with you, I'd like to have it in front of me so that I can make sure that I'm voting on something.
Okay.
And Jen's never seen it, so.
So in essence, let me just ask this way, because it's going to be in 2 weeks. Are we in essence saying that we're good with this proposed approach?
I'm fine with it.
And
Yeah.
everybody. Okay, so, but technically you want to see the contract to understand what's in it.
Right.
So at least we have an understanding as to what this is going to be. We have a meeting in 2 weeks, right?
Yes, I just want to say though, we've had discussions regarding the fact that our contract was up, this needs to be rebid. So in a sense, it's not a contract that you would see. What it is that, you know, you could take, and I know Mr. Lukaskevitz was the one that kind of shepherded this through. There is an existing scope of services regarding what the administration at the time, the school committee at the time, wanted from a contracted business manager. So my recommendation would be that either you entrusting the superintendent to look at that scope of services and whether or not it's, you know, that, or, you know, somehow it's up. But timeline-wise, I will say this, that, you know, it's, you're talking the bid process requires 2 weeks advertising in a locally published newspaper, and then you're going to have to award it afterwards. So you're talking a minimum of 3 weeks. I will say this though, just rest assured that if, you know, come June 30th, we're not going to pack our stuff up and leave. You know, should it take longer than that, you know, however it is that you decide to go forward, we're going to make sure that, you know, there's continuity in some fashion whatsoever, whether it's with us or someone else for that matter. But it does need to be bid, so it's not like it's...
So I think that makes it easier, at least from my perspective. I guess bidding takes priority.
Yep.
Then let's just start with that process. And then we'll follow up on that one. Great, thank you for that
Thank you.
input. Appreciate it, thank you. Okay. We have summer contracts.
So this is a tradition where the school committee grants authority to the superintendent to sign any contracts that need signature on their behalf during the summer months.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I will make that motion.
Second.
Any questions, comments? So one quick thought on that one. A couple of years ago, I guess, that, you know, I don't know whether it was around the summer contracts issue. There was some miscommunication, misunderstanding. Let's just make sure that we don't have a similar miscommunication, misunderstanding. Okay.
Got it.
So with that, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now we are moving on to the budget conversation.
I'm just kidding. I'm just
So
She's running away.
So what we did already, we approved our budget, and that's what we're going to be going to the town with. At least that's what we sent the finance committee. That's why, you know, I was suggesting that if everybody goes and reads the finance committee's booklet, you're going to see that some of the numbers are different already because they went out and they updated based on the information that they had. So at the end of the day, at least we know that based on the assumptions that were made, the numbers are accurate. But again, based on the assumptions that were made, the numbers are accurate.
Which numbers?
The numbers that are on the finance booklet for the town meeting. If anybody looks at the numbers that we have and then they try to match it to something. If you are sleepless like me and just you want to go and check your own numbers, you may see that there's a gap, but we verify that, again, based on the assumptions that were made when the finance committee was making those changes, they appear to be accurate, so we're fine. That said, I think what we wanted to do tonight, at least start a conversation as to what we would like to do in terms of what we would like to do if we do have access to some additional funds. Is that a correct portrayal of what we wanted to do? So at least have an understanding, should the town say, okay, we are with you, we have this much funds available, and should all the assumptions be accurate that we have a few, I don't know if it's 20,000, 25,000, I think the new version of the budget may give us, state budget I'm talking about. What are our thoughts, what are we considering as far as the items that were already reduced? And I actually...
Do we have an updated list of all
Yeah.
those reductions? Because, we had asked for one, but we didn't get one before, so that would help me.
I'll just leave it on with you. Thank you.
So, if I may,
Please.
I'd like to thank the leadership team for their hard work today. We met today to discuss this very topic. But first, prior to that, I want to be clear that all of the positions that were reduced in order to meet the budget parameters from the Finance Committee, all of those positions hold great value to the schools, to the community, and to the students. And in an effort to bring some of those back, I want to be clear that each and every one of those positions holds great value, and that these are very difficult discussions to have, and that I wanted to also thank the students for their efforts. I don't know if Autumn is still here. Unfortunately, she's not, but really thank them for their respectful efforts and their demonstration today. I think it showed great character. And they were not only chanting for their teachers, but for their school. And that's unlike where I've been in the past, where budget cycles go by and kids are rather apathetic. So thank you to the student body for participating, being active participant in the budget process. So I just wanted to start with that before.
Thank you. So what we're looking at...
So what you're looking at, the second page is what Marie asked for, which was a staffing list of reductions.
Is this the same? Okay.
It's a little different than yours.
It is?
Yeah, it's the same positions. It's just
Okay.
presented
Yep.
a little differently. The second page are the non-position items that were reduced to meet the budget gap. And then the final page is the work that we did today to address the question of the difference between your voted local school committee budget and the finance committee budget. So if we went to town meeting floor and the school committee budget was actually approved and somehow funded, what positions would be put back? So the senior leadership team discussed that and put the positions back in this order. Middle school math, it's the last page. It's yep,
This all
the very last page, and it's kind of slated and highlighted. Yeah, this page right here. So in this order, middle school math, high school English language arts, high school .5 social studies, elementary instrumental and choral music, the Granby Junior Senior High School admin assistant, the elementary .6 PE, and the Granby Junior Senior High School special education position. That all totals approximately $299,573. And then we also discussed the possibility of working with an elementary shared position to reduce class size in key instructional areas of literacy and math. And that position would be shared between the two schools. And then the addition of the business office position, half of that position coming back into central office. So the elementary shared position would bring the total up to $361,688, and then the business office, the total would be $373,938.
Just to clarify, the elementary shared position, is it those second, third, fourth grade
Correct.
supporting those three with paras or other
No,
type
with a
of support?
teaching position.
Teaching position.
Yep.
But we have three different grades.
Correct.
Which
So
ones are-
in working with the principals, working together to talk about how can we support, particularly in reading support and math support, to get the class size down so that teachers can have small groups of instruction going on. So you trying to be flexible and creative and not add another classroom at each grade level, but try to alleviate some of the class size during instructional minutes of literacy and math. It's not optimal. I will say that the team had asked for a position in each of the schools, but we're trying to recognize the fiscal constraints that we're under as well.
Is this in order of priority?
So the one thing, again, just, now I can do it publicly, that I appreciated on that second page that we have, even though it is trying my eyes, I really appreciated that you have the impact. And that goes to what you said. There is not a single reduction that doesn't have an impact that is important to the school district.
Correct.
And it makes it very, very difficult to say, we're going to prioritize this versus that. I guess the one thing that happened thanks to that impact that you put there, you were able to look at how many students are affected, how curriculum will be affected, how large the class sizes will be, so that you were able to prioritize based on that.
Correct.
That column. And is it fair to say that you're looking at the top part of that list as you're prioritizing, or is it the entire?
The entire list was prioritized.
Okay. And the main reason why I'm asking is because that 729 plus the 154 that you have in the second page, they add up to the current gap that we have. So how, that's why I'm trying to understand. Do we still have science or?
So if we were to put and reprioritize the entire 800, the amount, then we would go back to that list and we would go back to that original budget that also included some of your strategic plan objectives.
Right.
Because those things came off right away. But we decided as a leadership team that it would have that these were positions that had the likelihood of being fiscally supported.
Okay, so let me just ask this way. Maybe I can make it clear in my mind. We just approved the new science curriculum. A big part of that is, how it's supported so that all those requirements that we have within that curriculum are met. And I see a high school science position at the bottom of that second page.
Correct.
Are we saying that that's still in jeopardy of being eliminated, that position, or is it not?
We need to have clarity from the Finance Committee about the transportation return and whether or not that is going to be part of, I'm sorry, there's like this little line around, whether that's going to be part of the in-kind sheet or not, and whether we're going to be able to use that transportation money in our budget. So that's why it's kind of hanging out there a little bit right now. So between now and June 13th, I would hope to have a conversation with Mr. Martin to find out what exactly that number is, because I'm not clear yet
Okay.
on whether we're going to get that transportation money in our local budget.
I guess,
Right? That's my understanding.
We'd asked the finance committee about that as well.
Correct.
And They didn't answer
No
yes or
answer.
no, but
He said he would not support it.
answered no.
Yeah, they answered no.
John Malvera said he would not support it.
Yeah.
with no
Pretty
explanation.
directly. No, he just
The
wouldn't
last,
support it.
the last.
When he was sitting here, too.
I guess the clear explanation for the town meeting on that one will be this. When we created our budget initially, the number was at a higher level because we had not yet made a decision to reduce that bus line and the other reductions related to transportation. So after that, as we were scrambling, one of the options was reduce that one line. And our hope was that because the original version was already the budget that we had submitted, whatever the difference, the savings are for this year, we would be able to realize, and then we would be able to use it for operational purposes.
Correct.
So, if we can make it clear enough for the town, it's up to the town meeting, obviously, just like everything else, for them to decide whether or not that can stay with the schools. But what we're saying then, again, I'm just trying to relate what we're doing to the decisions that were made the last so many months and year. And one of them was a science curriculum. Are we saying that there is a danger that the science curriculum may not be supported by more than 2 teachers?
That would be correct. So if the science position was eliminated, then it would jeopardize implementation of the new science curriculum.
Okay.
Correct.
And if we add that one on this list, that would be in addition to...
It would either be an addition, or
Well,
the leadership team would have to go back and relook at that,
Okay.
the positions that were being added back.
Thank you for that. It's
I'm having trouble wrapping my, and maybe it's just because I'm tired, but the last time we left, we needed to still ask the town for somewhere around, I don't know if it was like 210 or 225.
$275,000.
Was it 275? Okay.
274, so yeah.
Okay, so 270. So I don't see that number here, so I'm having trouble understanding.
So we got close with 299. That
Oh,
was,
okay. So let me. Okay.
And again, I might be tired too. I need a little clarification on, going back to the strategic plan and say the IT stuff. We originally had 100 and some odd thousand. Where's?
We, as the leadership team, did not go back to those original cuts at all. We stayed with the cuts that were
Affect personnel.
Yeah, that were made last, which I think, my understanding is we never thought we would be here.
Right.
So that these were things that needed to come back first before we looked at positions that were either supporting the strategic plan or, and we had that discussion this morning, that exact discussion about, well, we haven't brought any technology back. But that piece was sort of lumped into that first, if you will,
Iteration.
Thank you. That's such a better word than what I was going to go
Okay.
with. Yes, the first iteration of reductions.
The reason I'm asking is I think it's important to illustrate the original, because I think it's important to illustrate everything
I
that's
agree.
been cut from the moment we started this process.
Sure.
Because we lose touch with that too, because
Yes.
it's been so many.
That, number one. And number two, I think we need to demonstrate to the town exactly what we're losing.
Yep.
And especially as it relates to the strategic plan that we developed.
And I think that's a great point, because that's going to allow us to have this conversation around
A broader conversation.
a much broader conversation, and probably it's gonna come back, whether it's at the town meeting or elsewhere. This thing about schools not having a plan. Schools don't just plan based on numbers. We don't say let's just have a model that's going to have 20 students in a classroom, which was, suggested before. We look at a strategic plan which aligns with our vision as to where we want the school district to be. We may be completely off, we may be in dreamland, but that's how strategic planning starts. Our strategic plan was the refined version of all that visioning that we did with a lot of folks who are in this room, and then we came up with that strategic plan. So I completely agree with that, because what it does, it just allows us to say, well, the plan was there. The plan was this, and our budget was to align with that. And then we were going to go and have the conversations. This year, we did not even have the opportunity to have a decent conversation as to what corresponded to that strategic plan. From the get-go, we said, no technology. Dave is there. No technology, and they said, okay, I'll just make do for another year or whatever you need me to, and we'll work on that. We should bring that up, because I don't know that there are many other school districts that are really trying to survive from a technology perspective the way we are. 99% donations, and then students have to bring their own technology if they want. They have to do something. We're basically turning this into a makeshift place where, you know what, if you have the personal ability, yeah, good, but otherwise, as a school district, we really don't have much to offer. That has to be visible. That is a huge impact. Because as a result of that, we could have just offered some kids to go online and do something. We could have actually provided support to some of the classes that we put put on the list, suggested maybe we're not able to offer because there is a larger technology need for them. So whatever we had on that first iteration, let's just put all that back, because we don't want the town to think that, it came down to, these positions, however difficult they may be, now we're having those conversations. No, it was a much larger conversation that we reduced down to this.
Sure. The other thing that I think I'm wondering out loud, if it makes sense to list the factors that have impacted our ability to balance our budget. Factors like decreasing state contribution.
Chapter 70, yeah.
Increasing health care and salaries and school choice out. Special education costs,
transportation increases.
So I think if we had, I don't know how you want to even highlight, but I think it's important, because I think some folks think that somehow we start off with this balanced budget, but we're overspending and we're we're doing this, we're doing that. And
it's not a spending problem; it's a revenue problem.
It's not a spending problem.
But I think people do think that.
Yeah. We also have to do, this is basically the onus on us part. We really have to do a good job next Monday explaining the real elements of our budget. Because the way it is presented, it's sometimes conversations go in such a direction that you have to elaborate on someone else's story, and we really don't want to do that. We really have to explain our side of the story. This is not us and them or anything, but as far as stories are concerned, I think we have our facts in order. We've been working on this for months now. We know what the impact is. We know what it's going to do to the school district. We have to articulate it as clearly as possible, so that folks understand and they don't just listen to a numbers game again. We need this, we need that. We do know that we are in a bad place as far as budgets are concerned. We do know that the way we're looking at our budget is not sustainable. But I don't hear that there are a lot of suggestions coming our way either, or there are a lot of there's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel from the state side or other sides. So we have to make sure that everybody understands that. The other thing that we have to make sure everybody understands, I know some of the folks in the room just, they're having these conversations elsewhere, whether it's social media or not. When you go and look at the list of schools spending beyond the net school spending, on the DESE website, a huge majority of towns are actually in a position to support. We are not. And that is our big problem. We have to look at other ways of generating revenue. But as a school district, we cannot. So our only recourse in the process turns out to be reduction, because there is no increase on the other side. We know that that is not sustainable, and we need to tell everybody that that's a huge problem.
That is a town. That is a town problem. That is not a school district problem. That is not a problem that the school district can solve
On its
by
own, at least.
themselves.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that message is clear enough. And we can keep communicating it, but it definitely, that message needs to get out.
Yeah. I have a quick question. On that business office one, the explanation says it is an automation. So are we saying that we're reversing the automation?
No, what we're saying is that that position is currently a 2-day-a-week position, and that because we're automating, we'd like to keep it at a day to help with the transition and the workflow on a regular basis. It's very clear that eliminating that position would be problematic at central office. But the decision was made through the budget cycle and through budget reductions to look at anywhere we could to make reductions. So that was a place that, through automation, we thought we could potentially work with a full-time reduction. But when we talked about putting positions back, if we could have that position 1 day a week to help with the paper flow and the transition through the automation,
Okay.
that was the decision.
Thank you. That helps.
So it's not the full amount of the position.
Okay. Any questions, any thoughts on the list? Any?
So I think this list is really helpful.
So when we go to town, the town, are we asking for this bottom number?
273? The 883,000?
That's what I would like to ask for.
That's what I would like to ask for too.
Well, I think, there are different ways of looking at it. We already approved and submitted our number.
Right.
So at least our approved version of the budget is done. We sent it to the finance committee, and I think that's it. If we want to go beyond that, there are a few things that can be done. Somebody from the school committee can say, you know what, we will, exactly. It has to be an amendment on the floor at this point to the article to say we're going to need more than this. But as that amendment is made, if it is made at all, and it doesn't have to be made, I'm not suggesting it has to be made at any one of these levels, because each one of them add different things to the list. Whatever that amendment is going to be, we have to be very clear about what that adds back and how it's going to help. So we go back to that impact statement on the other spreadsheet, and then explain why we would like to reinstate these. So I don't know if it's answering the question, but it can be a citizen, or it can be somebody from the school side, as far as I understand, but it has to be an amendment to the existing number.
Right, and I think it also depends on how the town meeting is going. I don't think it's really up to us to decide. I think once all of this information is communicated, it's going to organically happen the way it's going to happen. Without influence from the school committee. Like you said, we put the budget out there. According to the budget, the gap is that $275,000.
Right.
But the real gap.
Well, we know that,
Right.
but I think we did our due diligence,
Right.
and we said by putting that budget together and voting on it that we would make it work with the 275. So for us to change it,
Right.
I'm not so sure is in the best interest of anybody.
Well, let me clarify, and Archie and Cheryl, correct me if I'm misstating this. The version that the finance committee puts in the book actually is the balanced version of it, except for the updates that they made based on the assumptions. that there would be a little more money coming from the state side, and there would be some extra money potentially coming from the in-kind side. Otherwise, they did not really take that $275,000 gap version that we sent, because we sent two different versions. We said this is what we would like to have, which was a $275,000 in addition to the balance. And we said, if you want to see the balanced version, here's the balanced version.
And they put the balanced version.
But I think that's their duty to just say this is the thing, because at the end of the day, it's up to the town to say, you know what, we're gonna now speak up and we're gonna say that we need additional funds here. We did what we did in order to be able to show that additional money is needed to be able to reinstate certain services, positions back into the school system. And that's from that perspective, yes, we did do our due diligence. But this new list that, thank you all very much for working on and prioritizing from the needs perspective, it helps too, because now it puts that additional weight on it. That is the educational perspective. This is what we need to be able to make things work. It still is very close to that 275. It's 299, but still we have to ask for additional funds if we need to make it work. And the town meeting at the end of the day may say, sorry, no. That's why the balanced version exists. That's basically what the, a budget has to be balanced at the end of the day. I don't know if it helps or not. I just wanted to make sure that it's clear. The other version is not in the book.
It's clear to me, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we need any action on this one? This is basically your explanation to us what you have been doing. Okay. All right.
So is it possible to, what we talked about as far as adding, is it possible to see that ahead of time? In the event that anything else needs to be added or amended or changed, whatever.
That would be helpful.
Prior to the meeting.
We can work
Yep.
on that.
Is that something that similarly you want prioritized in return, or just because that took, we spent the day prioritizing having that discussion. So if we go back further and start prioritizing cuts, or you just want us to sort of list and talk about what the impact was?
Right.
Okay.
Just like you did
Of
on
all
page
the,
2.
Sure.
all the cuts.
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect.
I mean, that prioritizing, I think, is at this point is fruitless.
Yeah.
Going back that far.
Sean, I don't know if this will help you.
This is what the association's done with their reductions.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. All right. And also,
This is the list that we got, the original list with the technology.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that?
We can. Okay.
So there was a list that totaled $123,530, which was all technology restoration. So we're talking about that. We said, okay, let's just, this is what we promised ourselves to do, but for 1 year we're going to defer and we're going to resume this conversation next year. That's what we're talking about, for instance. It's one of those. Rest of it on the other side was pretty much close to what we are seeing, but this should not be really overlooked.
Correct.
And I think there was just more than just the IT.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There were teaching positions at
There was
middle
all
school, high
kinds of-
school.
Yeah, but this is, here. This is,
Do you have?
most of them are there. Okay, so is that where we're leaving it? So that's basically what we will share with the town meeting. And I just want to make sure, I will speak to all these changes. I will make a statement as well. Is it okay with the school committee if I do that? I just want to be, just jump in and do it without your... Okay, all right. So I'll do that. And it's going to be open to anybody anyway. Anybody can jump up, but I'll just work with our superintendent to make sure everything is accurate in there. Okay, anything else? Any other questions, comments? All right. Is that it for regular? I have one. Is this it? Yeah, we have the standing reports.
Correct.
Can we skip those?
Please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Table. Please.
Yeah.
I don't think
it
there's
is.
much to say anyway.
A couple of things that we need to revisit. One is the self-evaluation of the school committee after we're done with the budget. And there was one more thing that was in my notepad that I don't have in front of me that will come back to me hopefully later on. But
I'd like to revisit the digital backpack.
yeah, we
At some
can
point.
add that. We can add that. So anyway, so is there a motion to? No, actually, we have to get into the executive session, right? So at this point, we will vote to enter into executive session under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Part A3, to discuss strategy with regard to collective bargaining, as doing so in an open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. The committee will not return to open session. Is there a roll call, please, to enter the executive session?
Leanne Hamerkowski, aye.
Jennifer Curran, aye.
Maureen McCourt, aye.
And Peters, aye. Anne Marie Arvan,